Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I hereby call the 2018 Annual Town Meeting of the Town of Acton to order. I don't think we have people waiting in line to check in this evening, which is a good sign, although I wish there were a few more chairs filled in the auditorium. For those of you who don't know, my name is Peter Ashton. I'm the elected town moderator here in Acton. This year we have a robust set of warrant articles that I expect will prompt considerable debate. We have on the warrant spending exceeding $95 million for town and school operations, land acquisitions and transfers, 3 non-binding resolutions, and a few modifications to our general bylaws. There's a lot to discuss, but I'm certainly hopeful that we can conclude our business within 2 evenings. I'm not that desperate for the money yet. The warrant includes 40 articles, including what appears to be 21 on the so-called consent agenda. I am informed that at least 2 of those on consent, which are Articles 13 and 15, have been pulled by the selectmen as the town has concluded agreements with the respective bargaining units, and so we'll take those up in order in which they appear in the warrant, although we'll probably do them together. In addition, it was agreed that one of the citizens' petitions, which is Article 27, will be considered ahead of Article 4 this evening as it relates to the rules of discourse and debate at town meeting. And it falls on the shoulders of the temporary moderator to moderate that particular article once she gets elected here shortly, as I believe it's inappropriate at this point for me to be involved in that debate in any way. How many of you are here for your first annual town meeting? Raise your hands, please. Well, not quite as many as last December, but a few. That's good to see. Welcome, and I hope you will find this an interesting and rewarding experience. We had a lot of newcomers at the special town meeting last December, and I hope some of you have returned this evening and were not put off by the long lines that we had last December. While I'm on the topic of last December, there's a couple of comments that I want to make, and then I will briefly review the rules of town meeting. First, to those of you who did wait in line, I appreciate your patience and your stamina who waited in line to get into town meeting, as well as those of you who waited here in the auditorium as we processed those people. We've made some changes, as I hope you noticed as you came in, and I think that will make the process go much more smoothly. Second, as moderator, there are times when, like our favorite sporting events, one wishes one had access to an instant replay camera. I've reviewed last December's meeting several times, and I believe I erred in shutting down certain comments on Article 1 too quickly without providing sufficient warnings. To Mr. Nitzelm and to others who may have felt reluctant to speak as a result of my actions, I sincerely apologize. It was a difficult evening. I'm still relatively new to this job, and as others have articulated, the moderator must make judgments on the spot without the proactive formality of a judicial proceeding. Although that is no excuse, I do try to do better in the future. That said, in return, I do expect the rules of town meeting will be adhered to by all members. We have rules to ensure orderly debate and to allow more time to move through the motions before town meeting. With that in mind, let me review the rules of town meeting briefly. First, ensure that all cell phones are silenced, which I'm going to do now because I realize mine is not. Computers and other electronic devices are allowed as long as they're on silent and Wi-Fi information has been provided up on the screen. Parliamentary procedure at town meeting is guided by Mass General Law. Town meeting time, which is this handy little book, which is a handbook of parliamentary process prepared by the Massachusetts Moderators Association, as well as our town charter, bylaws, and customary past practice. Many of these rules and procedures are described in the warrant, and there is also more detail found on the town website. Town meeting sits as the legislative branch of town government. It is not the same as a Board of Selectmen meeting or a school committee meeting or a public forum. We are sitting here in a legislative session voting on various motions relating to budgets, bylaws, borrowing, and other issues on the warrant. Debate at town meeting must be relevant at all times to the motion on the floor. And I'll quote from Town Meeting Times. It says, "No person should be permitted to speak at length unless a motion is pending. No one is to speak impertinently or beside the question superfluously or tediously. And no person in speaking shall engage in personalities. To make sure of this, the moderator is entitled to forbid any speaker to mention any person present by name or to address anyone in the second person." Now, with respect to criticism or praise of public officials or town meeting members, I ask that members do so, 1, only when relevant to the article being debated on the floor, and 2, without using one's name but rather a title or other designation. Please understand that this is not entitled to stifle criticism of public officials, but rather to retain some civility in the process of doing so. As the town moderator in Bedford puts it, discuss policies and issues, not people. And the town of Dudley's moderator says, and I quote, "Never refer to another citizen by name, always refer to another speaker indirectly, such as, quote, the previous speaker, or, quote, the chairman of the board of whatever, or such other general forms of identification." My job as moderator is to preside over town meeting and to make sure that town meeting is fair, open, and civil. I expect that everyone will be listened to in a respectful fashion. Furthermore, one part of being civil is that there is no applause or booing when discussing articles. And on my part, I will do my best to exercise good faith, and I intend that my actions will be reasonable and fair. Additional information, including the presentations that you will see this evening, was made available on the website last week to also help you, town meeting members, prepare for town meeting. To ensure an efficient town meeting, it is incumbent on the presenters to be prepared to make succinct and clear presentations, and it is also important that you, the voters, be prepared as well. You should have a copy of the warrant, which is the agenda for town meeting, but what we actually vote on are motions. It is important that you listen and read the motion as it will be shown on the screen, because that's what we're voting on. At the pre-town meeting last Wednesday, presenters generally indicated that they would take between 4 and 8 minutes in giving their presentations. There are a few where I've allotted up to 12 minutes due to the complexity or the amount of money at stake. For each motion, I will announce the amount of time that we have agreed on for the presentation, and I will ask that presenters stick to those time limits. Timers that you see on the floor here will aid in everyone knowing how much time has elapsed. Recommendations by the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee are limited to 2 minutes, and town meeting members are limited to 2 minutes at the microphones. We will have the usual pro and con microphones, which I believe we have set up for here. So if you're debating in favor of a motion, please use the pro mic and vice versa. If you have a question, and questions are encouraged, you may use any mic. I will recognize speakers as they stand at the various microphones, and although I may know you personally, I will simply refer to you as the speaker at microphone number whatever. So those of you who I do not know will not feel slighted, but perhaps more importantly, so the television camera knows which microphone to focus its camera on. Please keep your comments limited to 2 minutes. This is important to keep the debate on point, to ensure fairness to all, and to keep the meeting moving at an efficient pace. I will not recognize a speaker wishing to speak a second time until all first-time speakers have had an opportunity to speak. Before we move on to do a quick tutorial on electronic voting, let me note that I have asked the selectmen and the town manager that we start tomorrow evening at 6:45 p.m. rather than the usual 7 p.m., so that the town manager can make the employee awards at that time. I encourage you all to come at 6:45 if you can for these awards, but by starting a bit early, hopefully we can get our regular business underway as close to 7 p.m. as possible. Okay, let's turn to electronic voting, which I expect we will use several times over the course of the meeting. When you enter the auditorium, you should have received a clicker. We will not use them for all votes because a voice vote is usually faster, but where a 2/3 majority is required, or where I or the temporary moderator cannot discern the result from a voice vote, we will move directly to electronic voting. The clicker you have is battery-powered, has an orange on-off switch and several keys numbered A through E, and a display, except for the ones with the Braille labels. We will only be using 2 keys, the A key, which is for a yes vote, and the E key at the bottom for a no vote. Of course, there are a few rules pertaining to the clickers. As much as you might like, you may not keep your clicker overnight, even if you're coming back here tomorrow night. But you'll have to turn it in at the end of the evening and get a new one if we continue another night. The clickers are pre-programmed and tested by our IT staff to ensure proper operation, and this is done before each night of town meeting. You should keep the clicker with you in the auditorium at all times, and please keep it off except when instructed to turn it on to save battery life. If you need to leave the auditorium during the meeting, for example, to use the bathroom, you must bring the clicker with you and have it checked at the door. You will be given a card that you will turn back in when you return back into the auditorium and receive your clicker back. To protect the integrity of the voting, you will not be allowed to leave the auditorium unless you turn in your clicker. We don't want you leaving it behind and letting someone else vote for you. When I determine that a vote by electronic means is required, I will announce that we need to take a vote electronically. The motion slide will be put on the screen, the timers will be set to 20 seconds, and I will instruct voters to press gently the orange power button to turn the clicker on. The ready will appear on the display indicating the power is on. Then I will ask to make sure everybody has their clickers on, and then we will open the voting window. If there are any questions, we have the IT department as well as tellers here to help assist you. And I just mentioned the word teller, and I need to tell town meeting something about our tellers. We have a new head teller this year. Taking the place of her father, Charlie Cadillac, is Ann Cadillac, who will be our head teller going forward. Charlie has served as either a teller or as a head teller for many, many years, at least as long as I've been coming to town meeting. And we certainly appreciate all your help and assistance, Charlie. Thank you. So back to electronic voting. Once we have the clickers on, we will open the voting window for a 20-second period. The timers will be visible and the voters will cast their votes. I will then indicate the voting window is closed. The IT staff will tally the votes and we will see the results up on the screen. Remember, press A for an aye or yes vote and E for a no or nay vote. The clicker will confirm your vote either by vibrating for the Braille clicker, or the display will show the letter that you have pressed along with a check mark. If you decide to abstain after you have pressed either the A or the E button, simply push one of the other buttons, the B, C, or D buttons, to cancel your vote, because only the A or the E votes are counted. At the end of the 20-second window, I will announce that the voting window is closed and we'll see the results tallied on the screen. This is the 3rd time we will have used electronic voting, and I trust it will run smoothly. I recognize that there may be some questions out there, and as I said, the tellers and staff are here to help. I thought it might be helpful if we tried to do one practice vote, just to make sure everybody is comfortable with the process. So we have a hypothetical question up there on the screen. Some of you may remember last year I was politicking for increase in my salary, so I thought this year we'd do it for the selectmen. So this is the practice motion that we're going to vote on. I would ask that everyone turn their clickers on by gently pressing the orange button. Has everyone done so? Okay. We will now prepare to vote. We will open the voting window. It is now open. You'll see the timer at 20 seconds, so you have 20 seconds to cast your vote. Your future's riding on this. I know. Okay, the voting window has closed, and we will tabulate the results here quickly and see the results. Well, we'll come to this at Article 1 here in just a few minutes, I guess. Before we get to Article 1, I think it is important for you to know who else is sitting up here on the stage. Jenna Dadachi is the chair of the Board of Selectmen. Would you introduce the folks at the two tables here on my right?
Gladly, Mr. Moderator. To my right is Vice Chairman Katie Green. To her right is the clerk, Joan Gardner. To Joan's right is Peter Barry. And to Peter's right is Chingsung Chang. And, oh, this is awkward. Behind me is the town manager on the far right. And from the law firm of Anderson Krieger, Nina Pickering Cook. And then Eva Skradek, who's our town clerk.
Thank you. Before I recognize Mr. Noon, who is chair of the Finance Committee, let me say that there's a member of the Finance Committee who has been sitting on the stage now for about 20 years or longer and is retiring as a member of the Finance Committee when his term is completed in May. That member is Bob Evans, who has served the town in a variety of volunteer capacities, including the Finance Committee as well as the School Committee and several other volunteer jobs. Bob has dedicated more time than I care to think about to the town and schools. He's a retired economics professor, which is near and dear to my heart too, and specialized in, among other things, labor economics, which has clearly got some particular relevance to the Finance Committee. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Bob for all of his service to the town, and I would hope that town meeting members would join me in thanking him. Okay, Steve, as chair of the Finance Committee, would you introduce the other members of the committee, please?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sitting to my left is Dave Wellinghoff, our clerk. To his left is Roland Borden, and then Jeff Brigart, Christy Anderson, Christine Russell, Mike Majors, and Jason Cole, the vice chair. In the cheap seats behind us, this is the first time we've ever had these, is Tom Farley, and John Benson, and the aforementioned Bob Evans. Stand up, Bob. They didn't see you before.
Thank you, Steve. Just one other piece of perfunctory early business here. I would note that there are various members of town and school staff here. My understanding is that the presenters at various times at town meeting may defer to them in answering certain questions. Since some of these folks do not live in Acton, it is necessary to have town meeting vote to allow them to speak. Rather than do this on what could be several different occasions over the course of the next evening or two, I would ask the town meeting now vote to allow any town or school staff member who is not a resident to speak if requested. So I would ask of all of those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. The vote carries almost unanimously. Okay. You can open your warrants. We're going to move to Article 1, which is to choose town officers. And the first motion under this article is to elect a temporary moderator. And I don't believe there's any relationship here. Mr. Berry nominates Joanne M. Berry for the position of temporary moderator, term to expire 2019. Do I have a second? Are there any other nominations? I declare the nominations closed. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The motion carries unanimously. The next motion is Mr. Berry moves that the town fix the compensation for elected officers as shown in the article. Have a second on that. Motion has been made and seconded. Any of the selectmen want to take advantage of the vote we had earlier? I see no one rising to debate, so all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. The next motion is Andrea S. Miller, trustee of the Elizabeth White Fund, nominates Mary Ann Ashton of 1 Old Barn Way, Acton, for the position of trustee of the Elizabeth White Fund, term to expire 2021. Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I declare nominations closed. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. There's one nay. The motion carries. Dean Charter, trustee of the West Acton Citizens Library, nominates Ellen Spiro of 25 Windsor Ave, Acton, for the position of trustee of the West Acton Citizens Library, term to expire 2021. May I have a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I declare nominations closed. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion carries unanimously. Moving right along here. I think we need the next slide. Dean Charter, trustee of the West Acton Citizens Library, nominates Melissa Laporto of 49 Windsor Ave, Acton, for the position of trustee of the West Acton Citizens Library, term to expire 2020. Is there a second? Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I declare nominations closed. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say nay. Motion carries unanimously. And finally, Robert Vanderhoof, trustee of the Acton Firefighters Relief Fund, nominates Robert Smith of 1102 Massachusetts Ave, Boxborough, for the position of trustee of the Acton Firefighters Relief Fund, term to expire 2021. Is there a second? Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I declare nominations closed. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The motion carries. We will now move to Article 2. Ms. Gardner moves that the town accept the reports of the various town officers and boards as set forth in the 2017 town report, and that the moderator call for any other reports. Is there a second? The motion has been made and seconded. Do the selectmen have any comments on this article?
The Board of Selectmen supports this article.
And the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee supports this article.
Is there anyone wishing to speak to this motion? I see no one rising, so we will vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. The motion carries unanimously. See, isn't this fun? We're moving right along. This one will be pretty quick too, I think. Article 3, budget transfer. Ms. Adachi moves that the town take no action. I have a second. Ms. Adachi, do you have comments to make on your motion, which has been seconded?
The board recommends that the town meeting take no action.
And the Finance Committee?
We agree.
Anyone want to debate this one? I will call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. The motion carries. Okay, by prior agreement with the proponent, we will now take Article 27 out of order as it relates to the conduct of town meeting, and I will turn the gavel over to our newly elected temporary moderator, Ms. Joanne Barry, to handle this article. And I will be leaving the stage so that my presence will have no impact either on the debate or the vote. All yours.
Thank you. I will confirm that Peter Barry and I are in no way related, at least back several layers on the tree. So we are taking up Article 27, just so that it will be clear the process that we'll be using. I will read the article. We'll ask for a second. Mr. Nichel will make his presentation. The Board of Selectmen does have a comment. The FinCom has indicated to me that they do not have any comments. And once those are taken care of, we will open up the floor for discussion for 30 minutes. As this is a non-binding resolution and we have plenty of other business to take care of, we'll take 30 minutes to debate, or less, if you should decide that that is enough. So, Article 27, Citizens Petition, non-binding resolution, Acton citizens' First Amendment right to criticize the actions of elected and appointed officials requires a majority vote. We will use the clickers to be sure. Mr. Nichel moves that the town adopt the non-binding resolution as set forth in the article. Do I hear a second? It has been moved and seconded. Mr. Nichel, to your article, 8 minutes.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Alan Nichel, and I'm the publisher of the Acton Forum. I'm one of 3 Acton Forum editors, including Scott Smyers and Charlie Cadillac, who believe in free speech and protecting our rights as citizens to actively participate in town meeting. As this slide shows, town meeting has a long and proud history of citizen participation. This painting by Norman Rockwell is entitled Freedom of Speech. So here's our motion, and I'll just read it quickly. No town official shall prohibit lawful speech at town board meetings or town meeting, including speech which criticizes elected or appointed officials by name or title for their decisions and or their performance of their duties while in office. Since we put our warrant article on tonight's agenda, there has been some significant changes. First and foremost, the right to criticize elected officials has been affirmed by Town Council and Moderator Peter Ashton. We have a First Amendment right to do so, even at town meeting. Mr. Ashton has offered his apology for restricting our free speech rights last December, and we accept it. One would think that would be the end of this, but unfortunately, Mr. Ashton continues to insist on trying to restrict the ability of citizens at town meeting to speak what is on their minds and to do so clearly and efficiently. And he is doing this by imposing a rule prohibiting all use of people's names, including for praise or criticism. We disagree with this rule and think it is an unfair burden on free speech. Town Council may be speaking to give her legal opinion about whether the moderator has the power to make this rule. To save time, we are happy to concede the point that as moderator, he can implement any rule he wishes. However, if the rule is illegal or unconstitutional, it will not be upheld in court. So rather than having a debate about the legality, let me suggest instead that we first determine if voters even support the moderator, and if they don't, he may decide to withdraw his rule, and that would end it. So my presentation tonight is not about the law, but about whether Mr. Ashton's rule is workable, is wise, and whether it furthers the ends of town meeting. So this is Moderator Ashton's rule as printed on page 84 of the warrant. Mr. Ashton has further clarified this in an email to us, saying that names may not be used for praise or criticism. Before we move to the next slide, please note that Mr. Ashton uses town meeting time to justify his policy. He quotes this reference all the time. It is published by the Massachusetts Moderators Association. Moderator Ashton is not reading town meeting time correctly when he uses it to justify his rule of not ever using names. In fact, town meeting time says that if it is too hard to figure out who a speaker is referring to, he should use their name. Here is the quote from page 136. Quote, "It may be easier to follow if speakers are permitted to identify the remarks they intend to corroborate, explain, or even to contradict as Mr. Smith's remarks, rather than the remarks of the person halfway down on the right-hand side. In other words, during the debate, speakers may identify other speakers by name, like Mr. Smith. While we don't accept town meeting time as the final authority on this, because it is just a guide, it doesn't even support what Mr. Ashton is proposing, a total ban on using anyone's name. Let me also mention that this guide implies that these speaking rules are meant to preserve decorum so that speakers don't attack one another. We agree that criticisms not based on official actions should be prohibited, but Moderator Ashton's rule goes much further than that. Now let's discuss the heart of this proposal, which is whether in practice it will work. How do we refer to specific people when we can't use their names? When someone's title is universally known, I can see this rule works fine. I can congratulate the town manager on his retirement and thank him for his service, but I guess I don't have to say his name. Does everyone here know about whom I'm speaking? I think it is helpful and appropriate to say Steve Ledoux, but our town moderator's rule would prohibit it. When you're trying to praise or congratulate someone, it doesn't sound so good when you can't say their name. Congratulations, Mr. Ledoux, and thanks for your 10 years of service to the town. What about when voters or even people watching at home aren't sure who we are referring to? I guess there is no harm done when you are offering congratulations, but if you are criticizing someone, a listener might be unsure of who deserves this criticism, and that could be a problem. We might accidentally tar an innocent person not deserving of criticism unless we can be precise. Using someone's name works well and is the universally accepted method of referring to a specific person. But maybe most people can be referred to in other ways other than their full names. Let's talk about that. Here we have 4 individuals, and I can refer to them by their first names: John, Paul, George, and Ringo. I don't know if anyone in Acton has the name Ringo, but if so, congratulations to you. I could say Donald, and everyone would know who we're talking about. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong Donald. I could say Fergie, and surely with such a unique name, everyone knows who I'm talking about. Oops, it's my bad. I meant this Fergie. Well, if first names are out, maybe we can use designations like 7 of 9. Yes, this is a reference to Star Trek. Maybe we can use town meeting time suggestion of identifying people from where they sit in the audience. The person in the middle, on the right-hand side. Well, maybe if we said 4th from the right. Okay, that might not work. It's hard to see who we're referring to, especially if you're watching on TV. Maybe it would be easier if we identified people by their personal characteristics, like the person with the funny hairdo. Or the other person with the funny hairdo, the person that looks like a dog. Well, that description could be misconstrued. Or maybe you could say the person with no hairdo. Or maybe our town officials are so popular that we can just say the member of the school committee who was elected 2 years ago. Do you know who I'm speaking about? No, me neither. If you have a fundamental right to free speech, in this case, criticizing public officials for their actions or conduct, the government should not create rules that make it very hard or nearly impossible to exercise that right. Otherwise, the right would be completely hollow. It would be like the government saying you had a right to buy alcohol, but it enacted policies that closed all the liquor stores. The effect of Mr. Ashton's rule, even if he didn't mean it to happen, would be to limit the ability of citizens to come to town meeting and accurately and individually criticize their elected or appointed officials, and would also make it impossible for any reporter, say from the Beacon, to accurately report on this public criticism because no names were used. My final slide is about our moderator, Peter Ashton. This speech mentioned his name 17 times, but all of my criticisms were based on policy and his conduct and actions as moderator. I hope no one thinks I crossed the line of impropriety or spoke uncivilly or engaged in personalities. Under Mr. Ashton's rule, I would have been repeatedly interrupted and eventually shut down. If I can't give the speech I just gave because of a rule prohibiting using anyone's name, then town meeting is going to lose a lot of input from citizens, including me. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could please withhold your applause. Thank you. The selectmen do have a statement.
And I understand I have 2 minutes, so I will read fast. The Board of Selectmen voted 3-2 at its March 5th meeting to make no recommendation regarding Article 27. Opinions among the 5 members were varied, but none expressed an inclination to recommend the article. Furthermore, a majority would have preferred that the article was not in the warrant, and the article's principal proponent had worked out his differences with the moderator outside of annual town meeting. The 2 dissenting selectmen wanted the board to vote not to recommend among their reasons. First, contrary to the premise of the article, there are circumstances where a town official may legitimately restrict lawful speech at a public meeting, for example, to keep public comments on topic. And further, the proposal in Article 27 is unnecessary because the town already has a healthy democratic process and is more open to and welcoming of free speech and public comment than other communities. Among the 3 selectmen voting to make no recommendation, one thought the article unnecessary, but also had questions about the moderator's actions during the December 4, 2017 special town meeting that gave rise to Article 27. Another selectman deferred to the traditional practice of the board's taking no position on a citizen's petition article, although that limitation is no longer ironclad. And the third selectman considered the Article 27 resolution to account insufficiently for applicable limits on speech during meetings and to give rise to the potential for abuse, but also believe that the board should remain neutral in the article. Annual town meeting is not simply a quaint relic of a bygone era, but is the town's working legislature where voters engage in the serious business of determining the course of the municipal government and schools for the coming fiscal year. Robust debate among citizens with differing opinions is a welcome part of town meeting, and that certainly can include criticism of public officials, provided, however, that the criticism is germane. Throughout all of the talk, someone must ensure that civility and decorum prevail so that even when issues are contentious and emotions run high, town meeting remains focused on business and does not degenerate into a food fight or worse. That someone, the adult in the room, so to speak, is the moderator. Whatever the outcome of the vote on Article 27, the moderator must retain the crucial authority to assure an orderly town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now open up the floor for discussion and debate. If you could introduce yourself and give your street address before you speak. The speaker at microphone number 2.
Good evening, Richard Fallon, 27 Faulkner Hill Road. I'd like to respond actually to the resolution. The previous speaker talked all about names. That's not what the resolution says. The resolution says no town official shall prohibit lawful speech. Now, I would like to talk about the Red Sox and the pitching, et cetera, and that's lawful speech. In my 2 minutes, you probably don't want to hear about it. I like to hear myself talk like everybody else does. But I would hope that the moderator would, if I started to use my 2 minutes for talking about whether we should have Kimbrell in the 8th inning or the 9th inning, that he would stop me and direct me to the point. We elect a moderator to run this meeting because it's business. We're all in the business of legislature and doing the town meeting. I'm extremely disappointed in this article because this article is trying to tell not only the town moderator, but anybody in any board, don't do your job. Don't direct things. What this article says is you can talk on anything you want, and we don't think the moderator should direct you to address the issues. I find that really, really disappointing. I find that trying to destroy the town meeting. If everybody got up and talked on whatever they want, it would be chaos. It would stop people from coming. That's really disappointing me. I urge you strongly to vote no on what this article says, not on something that isn't what this article says. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone 3.
Is this on? Yeah, I'm Charlie Cudlick at 19 Polivy Road. First, what the previous speaker just said is completely wrong. It's been made very clear that all discussion must be pertinent to the article. That's not part of any discussion or debate. This resolution does not say anything to the contrary, so I encourage the previous speaker to listen and read it over again. As to the non-recommendation by the Board of Selectmen, it's the most negative non-recommendation that I have heard in the many, many years I've been going to town meeting. If you want to recommend against it, I should think the Board of Selectmen would have voted to recommend against it rather than make no recommendation, but then go and discuss why they're really not for it. I think the issue is very simple, and as Alan explained, originally at the time that we had to file this article, there was a question about the extent of the prohibitions. Most of that's been resolved. If you think that using people's names is in some way an impingement on their character, that's fine, but it's not. It's just a simple matter of making the discussion clear, relevant, efficient, and making discussion at town meeting worthwhile. So I think voting yes on this article will accomplish that. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone 4.
James Wood, 4 Redwood Road. I would like to point out that, as has already been observed, this is a legislative body when town meeting meets. Every legislative body I know of, and the moderator mentioned other town meetings, have a rule very similar to this, up to and including what used to be thought of as the world's greatest deliberative body, the United States Senate. I reserve judgment on whether that's still true, but nevertheless, it has a rule that you will not criticize, attack by name another member of the Senate. And one senator of not fame, but infamy, who was censured for violating that was the late Senator Joe McCarthy. It is possible to criticize, it is possible to say all kinds of things in other forums. There are blogs, there are newspapers, you can say whatever you want. They're not legislative bodies. I think that's the distinction that needs to be made and needs to be remembered. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone number 3.
Thank you. Scott Smyers, 382 Central Street. I'm one of the proponents with this, but I want to respond to one of the comments from the Board of Selectmen, which was they wish we could have worked this out without going to town meeting. I wish that was the case too. I personally requested from the moderator a definition months ago, soon after the December meeting, that we could work with when he was using the term personal attacks. I said, okay, well, give us a specific definition of that. He said he would work on it. We waited. Then I suggested maybe he should use a dictionary and try ad hominem attack. That's very close to what I think people are concerned about that we get into, where we go from criticism to insults. And that's really the key of this. We can have a grown-up discussion a mature debate on these very important topics and not turn it into an insult fest. And we've been doing that for many years, I think, here in Acton. There's no reason to think we won't continue to do that. But when extreme things happen with certain boards, people have the right to call them out on it based on their actions, not based on their personal attributes or characteristics, just their actions as a town official. And we tried our best so we wouldn't have to come here to the town meeting tonight and present it this way, but it wasn't an option. So here we are trying to defend our free speech so we can have a worthy discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone number 4.
John Peterson, 6 Jackson Drive. The business portion of town meeting is to discuss and vote on the articles as presented in the warrant. A responsibility of the moderator is to ensure that discussion by participants in town meeting is germane to the article, as several speakers have mentioned. The party who has offered the article is stated in the warrant. The sponsor of an article is not relevant to the merits of that article, whether that sponsor happens to be the sponsors of this article or the school budget or any other. The Citizens Guide to Town Meeting states, you may attack a previous speaker's argument, but do not attack a previous speaker. For example, do not say the previous speaker is dead wrong. Instead, say something like, I disagree with the argument we just heard. I believe that the Citizens Guide correctly emphasizes that town meeting discussion is about the argument, not about the speaker. If a moderator curtails discussion because it is beyond the scope of the article, this represents not a curtailment of free speech, but a limitation of speech to the business at hand. Successful meetings, town or otherwise, rely on leadership to focus the discussion. The public annually provides feedback on the performance of the moderator. That opportunity is the town election. In our recent election, an incumbent moderator, who is not to be named, was re-elected with a vote total suggesting that the citizens of Acton are strongly supportive of his past work. Please vote no on Article 27 to preserve the right of the moderator to facilitate town meeting discussions.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone number 3.
Tara Fredericks, West Acton. I support this bill for a reason that nobody else has spoken about. I fear that if we don't pass this, that it will be challenged, and I think that we have enough legal challenges relative to constitutional rights already, and that another few $100,000 to fight this one, I think, is avoidable. And with that, I want to ask, somebody said that, I'll say it, Peter Ashton apologized. Is that true to Alan? Is that true? I wasn't here. I was handing out flyers down at the free speech zone. So I appreciate that, and I wish it came sooner. I also would like some guidance relative to how to address a specific person who has made a specific argument or has made a specific action that you would like to bring attention to, especially when there are public officials, where we have their emails, we have their phone numbers, we have all this public information. If we can't then refer to them in a public forum, how exactly are you going to criticize their actions if you can't even name them? So we had somebody twice refer to somebody, and so what's the difference between that and their name? I think it's a lot easier, more straightforward per the state constitution. Law is supposed to be understandable to the regular person. And so I ask, how exactly can we criticize the actions of our public officials if we can't even refer to who they are? Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone number 2. Your microphone is, there you go.
Heather Hare, 407 Central Street. As our moderator so graciously expressed at the beginning of our meeting, we're here to discuss issues, not individuals. We need to consistently practice respect and civility during our town meetings. I'm a firm supporter of free speech, but this article seems to create an environment that is attacking and abusive to criticizing individuals for more personal reasons. I question the intention of this article, where it states that they state this is an issue of freedom of speech. I believe it's a setup to disrupt our ability to continue with a civil approach to our town discussion. Is this really about freedom of speech, or are we setting the stage for another agenda item? We take on roles in our community that we choose. There are options for all in this room to participate in an elected position as they become available, as well as options for us to all exercise our rights to vote for those elected officials when they are up for election. I hope that we continue to follow town meeting bylaws and rules to continue to provide a respectful process in order to do business, for all of us to participate, be heard, and attend our town meeting in which we make decisions on business that are important decisions for our town. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone number 2. Speaker at microphone number 2.
Okay,
it's on.
It is on. Okay. John Sonner, 76 Maple Street. And like the first speaker, I feel like there's a disconnect between the presentation and the motion here. The motion is actually fairly simple in terms of saying shouldn't prohibit free speech. But if you look at the history behind what prompted this, as well as the presentation talking about names, it's not about names. The fact that if we go back to December, where the question was, okay, can I address them by name? Can I address them by, it was about the relevancy of the criticism to the article itself, which had nothing to do with the article, in which case the moderator said move on. I certainly don't want to limit free speech, but at the same time, I also want the discussion to be about the article itself and nothing else.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone number 1.
Mary Donald, Taylor Road. I think it's time to move the question.
There is a motion to move the previous question. Is there a second? All in favor of cutting off debate, please say aye. All opposed, please say nay. Debate is cut off. I would like us to take the vote on this by using the clickers, please. So if you could take them out and turn them on. And you may proceed to vote at this time. Okay, thank you. The period for voting is now closed. And is being tallied. The motion has failed, and you can see the vote on the screen. Thank you. And now, do I have to say I declare the vote has failed? Okay, I did, okay. All right, I assume somebody will tell Peter that you're right there. Excellent, perfect. Point of order. I heard a point of order. Okay.
Okay, we're about to move on to the budget articles. It is customary for the Finance Committee to give an overview of the town finances, so I will call upon Mr. Noon, Chair of the Finance Committee. The floor is yours to address town meeting on the state of our finances.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think this is the first time the Finance Committee has ever been called on to lighten the mood in town meeting. I will do my best. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about 3 things: the financial condition of the town, the FY19 budgets, and the longer-term outlook. As far as the financial condition goes, Acton is a very sound financial position. Both the town and the school district are rated AAA by the bond rating agencies. Acton, as a matter of fact, is only one of 7 cities or towns in the Commonwealth that is rated AAA by both Moody's and Standard & Poor's. And our tax collection is outstanding. You all got your tax bills in the mail? Thank you. Our reserves as of the last fiscal year were a little over $9 million and about 10% of our total spending. And the reserves I'm talking about include our free cash, stabilization fund on the town side, and our share of the school's excess and deficiency reserve. Now we're down a little bit from the high points of a few years ago, but we're still in good shape, and these are in no way excessive based on the capital needs that we are facing down the line. All right, this one's going to take a little time to explain. We have this concern, and this graph shows the increase in the years 2010 to 2016 of the average single-family income, which is the green line, the average single-family property tax bill, which is the blue line, and the average single-family home value, which is the red line. These 3 averages show very different growth patterns. The average tax bill has increased 18% cumulatively. Average income has increased 24%. But not everyone in this town saw that kind of income growth. Social Security over that same period only increased 9%. Our concern is that the average single-family home value, the red line, is lagging substantially behind and has increased only 5%. Now on to the budgets. FY19, the proposed spending is, yes, just a hair under $96 million. It's an increase of $3.3 million, or 3.6%. School spending, the big bar in the middle, accounts for 67% of that increase. The total operating budget for AB increased by $2.6 million, or 3%. But after accounting for the school's revenue, reserve use, and cost shifts per the regional agreement, our assessment increased by 3.9%. Town budget only went up by 2.5%, or $855,000, and the Minuteman assessment increased by $230,000, and that's driven mostly by the first-year debt service on their new building. So how are we going to pay for this? Well, Proposition 2.5 allows us to increase the tax levy 2.5%, and that comes to almost $2 million this year. Now, we have a little bar called untaxed levy capacity, and believe it or not, we have not always taxed to the full 2.5%. And as recently as FY14 and 15, we did not. So we had an amount of $910,000, which we could have taxed in prior years and didn't. Now, that amount, per state law, can be added to the increase in any year without an override vote. This year, we are adding $304,000, or about a third of that total. Now, new growth is the value of new buildings or improvements not previously included in the tax rolls. That adds $800,000 to our revenue. And local receipts, which are excise taxes, permits, and other fees, contribute about $260,000. As a result of all this, the average single-family tax bill will increase by 3.6%, or about $398. Moving past FY19, the Acton Leadership Group Plan, which is on page 25 of the warrant, shows, in addition to these FY19 budgets, projections for FY20 and 21. It's based on a thorough analysis of the costs and revenues. There's no foreseeable need for Proposition 2.5 override for operating costs. But in considering the near-term and long-term future, the most important factors will be compensation and capital. Now, this shows the growth in compensation, both for the town employees and total compensation, including health care and everything, and our proportion of the schools. And this growth has averaged, from 2010 to 2017, 5.1%. Now, it's important to note that in 2017, compensation cost was $77 million. And by not total coincidence, our tax revenue was also $77 million. So the concern here is if our tax revenue at $77 million grows at 2.5% a year, then our compensation simply cannot keep increasing at 5% a year. It's crucial to our long-term fiscal health to keep our compensation increases under control. Capital. At the special town meeting in December, you approved a feasibility study for a new twin school to replace 2 of our 50-year-old elementary schools. Later on tonight, you'll be asked to approve design funding for the first new fire station in 60 years. Now, the cost of building these will be covered by long-term borrowing. Principal and interest payments are added to your tax levy, but they will be excluded from the Proposition 2.5% limit on annual property tax increases. These are called capital or debt exclusion overrides, but that's just another way of saying your taxes are going to go up more than 2.5%. However, before that happens, you must approve it at a town meeting, and you also must approve it, a ballot question at a town election. It's too early to accurately predict the impact on your tax bill of these things, but what we know now, the principal and interest in the twin school and fire station will increase taxes by about 5%. However, we have debt service on existing debt that will be falling off in those years, so that'll mitigate probably half of it. So you'll be looking at more like a 2.5% impact on your tax bill. Capital improvement plans. The town and school district commissioned studies 2 years ago of all their facilities. For the most part, they were found to be maintained adequately, but were in serious need of upgrades or even had reached their end of their useful lives. As a result, both the town and the school district have embarked on multi-year capital improvement programs, which encompass all the buildings. These investments will be paid for by increases in the capital line items of the operating budgets and by borrowing within Proposition 2.5 limits, meaning not by override. Other long-term concerns, OPEB, our other post-employment benefit liability. We have been doing a terrific job of funding that. We're in a great position relative to other towns and school districts across the Commonwealth, and we need to continue to do that. Land purchases, specifically the use of town reserve funds to purchase land. Through the CPC, funds are set aside each year for open space, but in recent years we've used town reserves to purchase land. Now, we've got nothing against open space, but from 2012 to 2016, the town spent 8 times more on land than we did on buildings. Part of your tax dollars are already earmarked for open space through the CPC. We believe we need to balance our priorities for using town reserves to make sure our buildings get fixed as well. Finally, change is coming. FY19 will see a new town manager, a new superintendent of schools, planning for the first building since 2005, planning for the first Proposition capital, 2.5 capital override since 2005. We are all going to need to work together to achieve sound planning and fiscal management to ensure that Acton maintains an excellent and affordable quality of life for all its residents into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noon. Appreciate that. We will now move to Article 4, which is the town operating budget. Let me read the motion. Ms. Adachi moves that the town appropriate $33,837,365 to be expended by the town manager for the purpose of funding the fiscal year 2019 municipal budget, and to meet this appropriation, $33,422,413 be raised from general revenues, $414,952 be transferred from free cash, and that the town authorize the town manager to lease on such terms and conditions as he may determine vehicles and equipment for a period not to exceed 5 years, and to sell, trade, or otherwise dispose of vehicles and equipment being replaced, and to expend any proceeds so received. Do I I have a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Ms. Adachi, you may speak to your motion.
Thank you,
By
Mr.
agreement, I believe you have 8 minutes.
Yes, yes. I will try to keep track of that. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, everyone. This is the first slide. I will be talking about only Article 4, but I thought you should see the context. The remaining articles are all the rest of the municipal budget, and you'll be hearing about those items a little bit later in the evening. But the operating budget, which is Article 4, constitutes about 98% of the municipal budget for fiscal 19. A bit about the budget planning process. The previous speaker mentioned the Acton Leadership Group. This is sort of an unusual budget planning process involving the chairman and vice chairman of the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, the finance committee, the town manager, the superintendent, the finance directors for both the town and the schools, and a professional facilitator and a recording secretary who come together. We start in the fall, and we start talking about the upcoming fiscal year's budget. The aim is to achieve consensus on revenues, proposed spending, proposed use of reserves, and this 3-year plan that the finance chairman mentioned earlier. I have to say that sometimes the 2 years beyond the future, the upcoming year are a little bit squishy. I don't know that we spend a lot of time talking about that. But in any event, the process has been working well for quite a while. We try to build consensus. The representatives at the leadership group go back to their boards and have a discussion. And ultimately, when we get to town meeting, everybody is pretty much on the same page with regard to their respective budgets. This is a bragging point. We have a AAA bond rating pretty much all the time, or at least all the time I've been on the board. In this case, it's Moody's, and it's really principally because of very effective municipal finance management. And in this case, for Moody's, it's one of 14 municipalities. I think that for both Moody's and the other bond rating agency, it's 7 communities. But some highlights for the current fiscal year, 2017 to 2018. The Bruce Freeman Rail Trail is pretty much done in Acton. Concord has already started to build its part. The next big item would be the Route 2 crossing, which will, in design, conceptually represent a collaboration between representatives of the Board of Selectmen in the 2 towns several years ago. So if anybody says we didn't know about the design, that really isn't true. We also purchased the 161 Newtown Road open space parcel. It was high on our list of open space parcels, and it will create some synergy in that area with regard to other conservation parcels. We now finally, after years of talking about a new senior center facility, actually have a senior center facility. It was created in an existing building. It also now houses the human services departments, which are the community services coordinator, the nursing service, and the veteran service officer. And finally, the town has started to provide advanced life support. We previously were part of a consortium of communities that provided that, and it occurred to the town that financially and service-wise, we could actually probably do a better job ourselves. On 3 pie charts, this one is by type of expense. It really just illustrates that a big part of the expense in the budget is human resources, no surprise there. This is by department, and the pie slice for the finance department is kind of artificially large because the finance department budget includes items such as employee benefits that actually encompass all of the town departments and not just the finance department. And then finally, this illustrates the revenue sources. We are heavily dependent on property taxes, and then within property taxes, we are heavily dependent on residential property taxes. We have a very small business/corporate property tax base, which I guess we would like to grow to alleviate the burden on residents. 5-year chart just showing that this is for the entire municipal budget, not just operating, but it shows a trend of very small increases every year, on average 2.31%. The right-hand column, fiscal 19, indicates that the increase for the entire municipal budget, including not just operating but capital and subsidies, will be 2.54%. And then this is a close-up breaking down the fiscal 19 budget and the fiscal 18 budget. Shows that the operating budget for fiscal 19 represents basically a 2% change from this year, and again, the 2.54% increase for the total budget. And the operating budget does include payments into OPEB, which I'm thankful the previous speaker kind of explained. OPEB is other post-employment benefits, in other words, health benefits for retired employees. And it was a big issue several years ago until we got a handle on it, developed a plan. It's working very well. And as of 2031, the town, the municipal side, will have no unfunded OPEB liability. So fiscal 19 budget highlights, there's no really big project. There are a lot of smaller things, but obviously we'll continue funding OPEB. We'll continue to make progress on improvements in Kelly's Corner. There are a lot of fire safety improvements, a number of them that I'm going to be talking about during the capital budget presentation. And continuation of senior tax relief program. This is actually a $200,000 item. It is on top of the state circuit breaker relief that seniors can get to alleviate the burden of taxes. At the new Human Services and Senior Center, we're going to have 2 dedicated employees, maintenance person and new receptionist. These are not high dollars for those of you who keep track of full-time employees. And we're going to have some traffic safety improvements that I also will be addressing in the capital presentation. Finally, a couple of slides that have nothing to do or very little to do with the operating budget, and also name names, but I'm going to do it because I feel that it's important to do so. First of all, remembering 2 men who did a lot for our town, were really icons in our town, and passed away very recently. Mr. Hunter was a longtime resident of Acton, and he served a quarter century on the Board of Selectmen, and before that, he served 6 years on the school committee. He played a key role in the creation of Acton's sewer district, and his obituary quoted him about his own impending, or maybe it was in the future, demise, but he said, "I would hope that I would be remembered for my love of my family, service to the community, Coast Guard service, and lawyering, in that order of importance." If those of you who know Dore could imagine that, he would say something just like that. Brewster Conant, with John Whittier, conceived of what would become the Acton Arboretum. This is decades ago, and he stayed involved in the Friends of the Arboretum for decades. He was a longtime member of Conservation Commission and the Cemetery Commission, and every Patriots' Day he allowed the Acton Minutemen and others to cross his property on the Isaac Davis Trail as they marched to Northbridge and Concord. He was a member of the Acton Conservation Trust, and coincidentally, the ACT was holding its 2018 annual meeting the day he died, and I like to imagine that he was at the meeting in spirit. And finally, the town just learned about the death at age 80 of Richard Howe. Mr. Howe was a longtime Highway Department superintendent and the father of Health Director Cheryl Ball and Police Detective Scott Howe. Our sincere condolences to the family. And finally, another violation. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. This is Mr. Town Manager Steve Ledoux, his last Acton annual town meeting. He will retire at the end of June after a decade in Acton, 41 years in municipal management. He also is a rock music aficionado, hence the excerpted lyrics. The point of this slide is, with the right town manager, the right town staff, and volunteer committees, a community can get not only what it needs, which is essential, but also some of what it wants. And I would contend that that has been the case in Acton under the leadership of Mr. Ledoux. By the way, Steve, don't go anywhere yet, because we still have 2 months and we have to get work out of you. So thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, Mr. Moderator, the Board of Selectmen recommends approval of this article, and thank you.
Thank you. Does the Finance Committee wish to speak with its recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Finance Committee recommends this article.
Thank you. I will now open it up to town meeting members for questions and debate. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
I have a comment that ends in a question. The presentation of the town budget as a request for $34 million frames the seriousness of the request. The proposed municipal expense can be readily compared to town revenues. However, some math lies between the budget and the tax bills that will fund it. Across the country, many governmental entities present tax bills not as an aggregate request, but as itemized request. Taxes for municipal services, schools, sewers, and other items. The line items are then rolled into a total tax bill. On a quarterly tax basis, itemization allows property owners to see how their tax dollars are allocated across the services funded by those tax dollars. Of equal importance, itemization provides a direct ability to compare communities in terms of the cost of each type of service. For example, if Westford's municipal budget compared to Acton's, just as a straight-up number, it's a complicated exercise. On the other hand, if we were presented with the information that Westford taxes for municipal services at a rate of $5.90 per thousand, while Acton taxes at a rate of $6.50 per thousand, we would immediately have a better appreciation of where we stand. Those numbers are totally made up. The question is, what are the challenges of presenting the municipal budget as a tax rate? And if the FY19 municipal budget request were presented as a tax rate, what would that rate be?
Mr. Moderator?
Ms. Adachi, you may answer the question.
Yes, I've stood here and understood everything that you said, and I've got an answer. I was briefed on this, and I will paraphrase our finance director, who said, great idea. Maybe it's something that the Acton Leadership Group and the Finance Committee and other groups could take up in the next planning of the next fiscal year. But I understand that you've been in conversation with members of our finance department and had very productive discussion. So I think it's worthy of taking up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Hi, Nijan Datar, Wincliffe Drive. I read in the paper recently that the town spent about $100,000 on the legal matter that they pretty much lost in the Supreme Judicial Court about the funding of a religious sign. And since the case is not over, could you tell me how much do you intend to fight it further and how much you think it's going to cost and whether it's worth it? Because it's a sizable amount of money, given that the issue at hand was significantly less than $100,000, but you spent $100,000 defending it and looks like you might lose it.
Mr. Moderator?
Ms. Adachi?
The Board of Selectmen have not even had a chance to discuss what the next steps might be. So I'm not in a position to share any information with you because we haven't decided yet what we're going to do because we haven't talked about that at all.
All right.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
All right. Hello. Scott Smyers, 382 Central Street. I have a question about the OPEB. How that seems like good news. It's going down so rapidly, and not too long ago it seemed like it was out of control. Can you explain that again, how that was done? Is it because we're offering less long-term benefits? Has that's been renegotiated, or it's a money thing, or redefinition of how we approach it?
Mr. Moderator? I can start the answer, but I think the Finance Committee Chairman is in a bit of position to delve into the details. What I do know is several years ago, we had an enormous unfunded liability. One of the things that happened that I was involved in was that we were able to negotiate with all of the unions to adjust the health care coverage, the benefits packages, and I think it involved some of the union members taking on more expense, but that action alone, I don't remember the numbers, but I remember that it had a dramatic effect on the actuarial assumptions that go into calculating the unfunded liability, and the unfunded liability dropped. Whether there are other things that are happening other than our paying, we're paying in about $600,000 into this trust fund, and we're also, with every new employee, we're calculating an OPEB factor, so we're adding that to the budget to account for the future obligation. I don't know if the Finance Committee Chairman, who also was in charge of the OPEB committee, has any more insight, but I will let Mr. Moderator invite him to add his his insight.
Would the chair like to elaborate?
Certainly. There are several factors into calculating an unfunded liability that lasts some 30 years. But yes, the plan design, the copays, the deductibles, and the elimination of one of the most costly plans that we offered employees a few years ago contributed to that. Also contributing are investment returns. Not too many years ago, they were not too good. They're better lately. Medical cost inflation, which is also less than it was when we first started making these calculations. And going the other way is mortality tables. They actually changed not in our favor. So it's a group of assumptions on top of assumptions, but the biggest single factor is the fact that we've reduced our plan designs and we funded them aggressively.
Thank you. And it's one of my favorite topics, so it's good to see it going in the right direction.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Paul White, 8 Revolutionary Road. I have a simple question about revenue. The revenue from property taxes, can you comment on what proportion of that is from residential property as opposed to commercial property and how that compares with some of our adjacent towns?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
I know just generally that the proportion of residential property tax is very high. I don't know exactly what the percentage is, and as for comparator towns, I don't know about that, but if our finance department people are somewhere in the audience and are prepared to provide some insight, that would be great, my brain trust.
See the brains moving down here front and center.
And this is for everybody who doesn't know him, is Steve Barrett, who's the finance director for the town. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator.
Please proceed.
Sure. Our residential tax base is about 87, 88%. Our commercial is about 12 or 13%. Fluctuates a little bit, but that's about the average we've been at.
And do you have any comments about adjacent towns, Littleton or Concord or anywhere? I'm just trying to get a comparison.
I think what you'd find if you look at some of our comparables, whether it be a Westford, Concord, Lexington, I would assume they'd probably be a little bit lower on the residential, but I would think that they are very, very dependent on the property tax levy, similar to our state.
Mr. Barrett, Mr. Ledoux is sending you a lifeline, too. I think he'd like to chime in.
Well, having been a manager for a long time and having managed Westford and Sudbury, in addition to Acton, I have a little insight on that. And Westford, my recollection, at least when I was there and when I left 10 years ago, clearly, as you know, on Route 110, a lot more commercial and industrial activity. So it's about an 80-20 split. My recollection in Sudbury was probably less than us. It's probably 91% residential, 9% commercial, industrial.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Mr. Moderator, Bill Guthline, 503 Main Street. I have a question. We talked about the OPEB unfunded liability and the wonderful direction it's taken, but isn't the larger unfunded liability related to the pension plan? And could you talk about the size of the unfunded liability there and how it's changed over the last several years?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
The pension plan is not something that I really have a great command of, and it's a different issue. I don't know if either Mr. Manager or...
I believe the manager can address that. He's sending another lifeline.
They're getting used up really quickly. We're a member of the Middlesex retirement system, so the unfunded liability is funded as part of the assessment to the town. Over 50% of the assessment to the town is actually represents the unfunded liability. There's a state law that says all retirement systems unfunded liability has to be fully funded by the years 2040. So we're on this payment plan through Middlesex Retirement to reach that goal.
Mr. Moderator, I'm an accountant. Is it possible to get numbers?
We'd have to get them from Middlesex Retirement, but yes, we could get those numbers, sure.
Okay. It just seems like it's probably a large unfunded liability when you're thinking about the long-term funding of the town. I would think that would be a consideration. Right. That's why I raised the question.
And part of the problem has been statutorily back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and when we had the economic problem in like 2008, 2009, the state kind of kicked the can down the road in terms of when fully funded would happen. I think it was originally at 2030, then it got to 2035, then it got to 2040. So the legislatures had a little piece of that action and kind of kicking the liability out a little bit.
Okay, thanks. If I could, tongue-in-cheek, does the article as it appears violate the moderator's rule about using proper names?
I don't believe so. Right. That's probably worth a little point of clarification. When I was talking about my rules earlier, they relate to debate, not to the back and forth where we recognize people. My predecessor certainly recognized speakers from the floor by name because he knew many of them. I do it by the microphone number simply to make it easy for the camera. But the rule with regard to proper names is limited to the debate process itself. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Yes, I have a question. In both Mr. Noon's presentation and the municipal presentation, there was no mention of any future cost for eminent domain taking of land that will be needed for Kelly's Corner. Does anybody have an estimate? It comes up in a later article, but it would be part of the municipal budget. So is there any estimate as to the amounts and the timing of what could be a significant additional cost?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
I think I don't know that we have any numbers, and I don't know if Mr. Manager does, or I don't know if the presenter of Article 9 does, but I don't have any.
We may want to wait until Article 9, but if we can get an answer right now, that would be great, but I'm not sure we do.
I mean, Article 9 is to get an appraisal to determine those numbers, so
Right.
there's no way we would know those numbers right now.
Thank you.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Yes, hi, my name is Eric Cole, 84 Nagog Hill Road. It's probably been 30 years since I've been in this auditorium. I'm very proud to have grown up in Acton, and I'm lucky enough that when I went to college, I was lucky enough to live in a number of different areas. I would like to address the fact that I'm very happy with the town, that we have great fire departments, we have great police departments. I think we're a very lucky, happy family. It's a big family, Acton. The one thing I'd like to address is, as time goes by for senior citizens, such as my mom, it seems like something may be done in the future to address the fact that a majority of our tax money goes to the school system, which is good because it builds growth. And I've watched people retire across the street and thus come in new families with children, and it's an ongoing, beautiful process. But I think it's something for the board, the selectmen, to think about, that as time goes by, some senior citizens with the property taxes, we have 4 acres of property, it's a burden when a lot of that money is going to the school system, which I was lucky, very lucky, to benefit from 30 plus years ago. So it's something, I'm not addressing any direct issue, something for the board to think about in future meetings. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Me, Tara, from West Acton again. I think it's a good time to tell people about the senior tax relief program. I believe that I worked really hard to increase that amount, and I believe that in the budget now, it's over 200,000. Is that correct? I believe it's well over 200,000. But the point
Ms.
is
Adachi,
that...
do you want to confirm that?
Mr. Moderator, yes. I thought I had seen that it was 200,000, but maybe it's higher. This is from the Finance Department, which would know better than I. But that was the number I gave in the presentation, and yes, I would recommend that the previous speaker, if his mother is facing challenges, might want to talk to the Finance Department people about our local tax relief program, and if she hasn't looked into the state circuit breaker tax relief program, she should also look at that to see if she's eligible. But anyhow.
Just as a summary, I would like to make one comment. I believe that we should increase the senior tax relief program by a magnitude. I feel like if you've been here for however many years we can make the program, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, whatever it is, I feel like your taxes should be free if you're any income lower than, say, $50,000. That's just my opinion, but I hope people organize around that. And for those that might be struggling, if your property taxes are more than 10% of your income, please come see Brian McMullen at Town Hall, and you could possibly get a significant discount. Thank you.
I see one more speaker at microphone number 1.
It's true, the $200,000.
I'm sorry, could you please identify yourself,
sorry.
please?
Bonnie Lobel, 4 Proctor Street.
Thank you.
It is true that $200,000 is in the budget for senior tax relief, but my understanding is that no more than about 40 or 50,000 is ever used. The rest is just not spent each year. I agree. The tax breaks for seniors should be made larger than they are, because seniors are consumers, benefit the town in many ways, and do not use expensive services. I would like the board to consider that.
Ms. Adachi, do you want to
Mr.
respond to
Moderator,
that?
I just had a comment. It's my understanding from the Finance Department that one of the mysteries with regard to the local tax relief program is that there seems to be a reluctance on the part of some seniors to take advantage of it, in part because obviously to show that they're qualified, they have to disclose financial information. So that could account for the fact that the draw on the fund doesn't exhaust it. It's not necessarily that they're getting tiny payouts. It's that maybe some more of them need to see if they're eligible for it so that they could take advantage of it.
Mr. Moderator, follow-up question?
Yes, briefly. I think we're
thank
pretty
you.
much ready to vote here.
So if they're on the circuit breaker list, we could give them an automatic discount. And so that is a program I believe we have the ability to do, but I guess, Mr. Moderator, if I could not say your name, you're part of the senior relief program, and you may have an update on legislation, but I think that we could apply for home rule to get that done ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a gentleman walking to microphone number 1.
Good evening. My name is Pete Farmer. I've about 20 years in Acton. We have a disabled child who's about 20 years old. And in Concord, they have a facility available to them called The Ride, where disabled kids or young adults can get a ride into Boston. But in Acton, we're unable to take that transportation because it's not available to Acton residents. So I just bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no one else standing, so I think we will vote. All those in favor of the motion as read earlier, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The motion carries. We will now move to Article 5. which is the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District assessment. I will read the motion. Ms. Krishnamurthy moves that the town appropriate $59,981,958 to be expended by the Superintendent of Schools to fund the fiscal year 2019 assessment of the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District, and to meet this appropriation, $59,567,005 be raised from general revenues and $414,953 be transferred from free cash. Do I have a second? The motion has been made and seconded. Ms. Krishnamurthy, by agreement, I think we had 10 minutes, right? Set aside. You may begin.
Good evening. My name is Amy Krishnamurthy, and I am the chair of the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee. I will be addressing Article 5, the ABRSD assessment. I'd like to introduce my fellow school committee members, Dennis Bruce, Tessa McKinley, Paul Murphy, Mary Brolin, Bridget Bieber, Diane Baum, I can't see, Maya Minkin, and Eileen Zhang. I did want to say that 4 members of our committee, 2 from Acton, effective after town meeting is over, and 2 from Boxborough are going to be stepping down. And so I just wanted to take a moment to thank Dennis, Deanne, she's not, Katie, who's also not here, and Bridget for all of the service, all of your service to our community. Thank you very much. I'd also like to take a second to introduce our new superintendent. So if Mr. Light, would you mind coming up? Just briefly. So we are very excited that as of this evening, Peter Light has now we've signed contracts, and he'll be beginning on July the 1st. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to begin with a brief statement. This is from the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District's Regionalization Financial Oversight Committee. The Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee created a subcommittee in the fall of 2013 to review the projected financial benefits of regionalization proposed by the Regional School District Study Committee, RSDSC, and presented to both town meetings in the spring of 2013. The expectation was that the subcommittee would be in existence for 5 years. It consists of representatives from the Acton-Boxborough Boards of Selectmen and Finance Committees and 2 school committee representatives. After reviewing in detail the average per pupil cost for each elementary school for FY17 and the projected financial benefits, we concluded unanimously that 1, per pupil costs for Blanchard Elementary School in FY17 continue to be significantly less than before regionalization, and 2, the projected regionalization savings, cost-cutting measures, and increased regional transportation aid are accurate and consistent with estimates that were presented at both Acton and Boxborough town meetings in the spring of 2013. Thank you. Whoops. Okay. I'd like to start. We are very proud of our students and their accomplishments. I'd like to take a moment and just highlight a few. After all, students are the reason why all of us are sitting up here tonight. The Early Childhood Program has partnered with Joan Kelly, education researcher and developer of the Parent Uptake Project, to help support young children's literacy learning. At the elementary level, Blanchard has been using outdoor learning to inspire, engage, and promote problem solving. Conant participated in many community service projects, including Valentine's for the elderly and Pennies for Pediatrics, which benefited Emerson Hospital. Douglas continued its exhibitionary learning this year, with fifth grade students learning about facing personal challenges through a study and recreation in their classrooms of a base camp on Mount Everest. Gates kindergartners will be having their annual medieval festival where the high school madrigal singers come dressed in full costume and sing during the feast. McCarthytown fifth graders were able to participate in an overnight to Mara Vista where they learned about leadership and focused on team building. Merriam students have focused on building resilience with students participating in multiple events around this theme. The junior high now has an active community garden that has provided food for its cooking club and the students' lunch programs. At the high school, and indeed across the district, student wellness continues to be on the forefront of student goals for 2017-18, with multiple committees and groups of students, parents, and staff looking at ways to support this goal. At the high school specifically, the math department continues an elective called Exploring Computer Science, and that this is the first year that the World Language Department is awarding qualified students a seal of biliteracy. And this recognizes those individuals that show proficiency in 2 or more languages. And at the 22nd annual Community Service Awards Night, 725 students were recognized for completing 76,468 hours of community service in the year 2017. With our budget, we support the mission, values, and goals of the school district. These include meeting our students' social, emotional, educational, and safety needs. And we are committed to continuing to focus on the core values of wellness, equity, and engagement. The region's FY19 budget comes to $88,721,492. This is a 3.06 increase over last year and is in line with the Finance Committee's point of view recommendation. This is less than last year's increase of 3.63% and is the lowest increase since we have expanded regionalization. Of the $89 million regional budget, we are asking for your vote tonight on Acton's portion of approximately $60 million. This is a $2.6 million or 3.9% increase over last year's assessment. Some of our key budget drivers. We are going to be moving to a single-tiered busing schedule at the elementary level, meaning that all elementary schools will begin and end at the same time rather than having an early and late start. As you can imagine, it's been very difficult for parents, teachers, and other community members to have to constantly be switching back and forth each year from a late start to an early start. In conjunction with this change in the busing schedule at the elementary schools, the district has been able to accomplish a long-time goal of establishing a later start time for our junior high and high school students. Next year, the high school will move from a 7:23 a.m. start time to an 8:06 a.m. start time, a full 44 minutes later. We were also able to decrease health insurance rates by 5%. We have increased funding for capital projects to $1 million, and we are able to address class size and changing student needs at the elementary schools. And this slide just shows the allocation of the ABRSD budget. As you can see, we are clearly a people-based system with salaries and benefits accounting for about 80% of our budget. The story over the last few years has been that enrollment has been declining. And as you can see from this slide, we have we have seen a significant change to this trend. In 2015, which is the blue dashed line, we were projecting a drop of about 1,000 students. In 2016, which is the red dotted line, the projection was adjusted and the new expectation was a drop of 500 students. And last year, after again recalculating projections, we are now seeing no significant drop at all. And in fact, at the elementary level, we are already starting to see an increase. The change in our projections, we have found, are due largely to improvements in the economy and an increase in housing turnovers in both towns. We have experienced significant growth in the number of English language learners in our district, growing from 85 ELL students in FY10 to 267 in FY18. This budget includes one additional English language educator to address this. In order to address class size issues and our changing student needs, we are looking to hire 3.5 regular elementary and specialized teachers. We are also in the 3rd year of implementing our strings program, and will complete this process by increasing from a 0.6 instructor to a full-time educator. And as mentioned earlier, we have raised our spending on capital projects from $761,000 last year to $1 million. And we are hoping to maintain this $1 million allocation each year going forward. Some of the key projects we are addressing this year include repairing windowsills, masonry, flooring, and paving across multiple schools, as well as repairing the auditorium in the high school, the ceiling, and making some cafeteria upgrades. All right. Our E&D remains strong. Out of it, we are using $200,000 for operating expenses and $575,000 to fund the first year of single-tiered busing. After this year, we will qualify for state regional transportation aid reimbursement. And just as a reminder, we voted last December to use $710,000 for a feasibility study in partnership with the MSBA. And I'd like to take a moment to say thank you to all town meeting members who overwhelmingly supported this. Oops. Okay. Well, the last slide got cut off, but that's fine. As you can see, we've worked hard to bring you a fiscally responsible budget that aims to support all of our students in our district goals of wellness, equity, and engagement. And we respectfully ask that you support Article 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation for the Article 5?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We do. The Board of Selectmen voted unanimously to support Article 5, the regional school assessment. In addition to a slower than anticipated decline in student enrollment, the district has had to grapple with increasing special education costs, a changing student demographic with more needs and fewer resources, and extensive capital needs. This year's budget addresses those challenges while also recognizing the budget constraints of the region's 2 communities, and so the Board of Selectmen recommends Article 5.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. With full acknowledgement to the school committee and administration's workload between the change in school start time, the new building project, other requirements, and day-to-day operations, we commend the budget for coming in line with our previously published point of view. We look forward to working with the building. We look forward to building a close working relationship with the incoming superintendent and school committee, particularly with regard to capital planning in the coming year. The Finance Committee recommends this article.
Thank you. I'll now open it up for questions and debate. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Catherine Black, Central Street. Having no children in the school system, I'm unfamiliar with some of the jargon. Could you please tell me what an English language learner is?
So these are students that come in with where their first language at home is not English. So then they come in and face challenges of trying to not only learn the language, but then adjust to new culture.
Okay, so that's
schools.
what they used to call ESL.
It's ESL, yes.
One more question, Mr.
Certainly.
Moderator. What, pray tell, is strings?
This is a violin, cello, and viola program.
And why are you not just calling that music?
So we've always had a band. We've always had certain instruments. We're calling it a strings program because up until two years ago, well, this will be the third. So 2 years ago, there weren't any offerings for students that wanted to play violin, viola, cello.
Okay, it just sounded like it was another one of those nutty acronyms.
Oh, sorry. I apologize.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
I shall go nameless, but you can call me the defender of free speech. So I had a question for all the boards, and then a question specifically for the school committee. So for all the boards, I just want to know what the vote was to recommend the budget. I think the Board of Selectmen may have said it was unanimous. How about the FinCom, and how about the school committee itself?
Why don't we do all 3 here? So we'll start with the Board of Selectmen.
Yes, to confirm, it was a unanimous vote of the Board of Selectmen.
And the Finance Committee?
It was 5 pro, 3 con, and 1 was absent.
Thank you. And the School Committee?
The school committee voted unanimously.
Okay, so I'd like to hear from one of the con members why you voted against the school budget.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Noon.
In my long tenure on the FinCom, I don't believe we've ever had a discussion like that. I mean, you're welcome to ask anybody that wants to answer the question may, but...
Ask anyone who wants to answer it.
If there's anyone on the Finance Committee who would like to answer that question, they may. I don't hear anyone.
Okay, so I'll just make a comment on that, and then I'll ask my second question. And my comment is, you know, everyone is singing the same song here, and town meeting is not getting a good, full understanding of what the issues are in this budget when you only hear one side of the presentation. My question is, why is the school budget going up 50% higher than the town budget as a percentage, when both entities have essentially the same amount of personnel as their driving budget force?
Ms. Krishnamurthy, do you answer that? Or would you like some help?
I'd like to phone a friend. Maybe Mr. Verlino, if you would, or if there's anyone that would be interested in answering. Mr. McAuliffe, who has been definitely a lifeline for the whole year.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir. You may proceed.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure I understand the full question, but the 2 budgets are different. I think they're differing in many different ways. One of the bigger expenses on the school budget side is the one-time, or actually over 2 years, funding for single-tier busing. That cost is estimated to be $750,000. We are using, as indicated in the slideshow, $575 of excess and deficiency to cover that portion of the cost. And it's important to note that beginning with FY20, regional school transportation aid that comes from the state will fund approximately $390,000 of that cost. And reimbursement, regional transportation reimbursement, lags by a year because it's based on the previous year's costs. Additionally, I think that on the personnel side, this budget funds the second year of a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with all of our unions. In particular, with the on the teacher side, the second year happens to be the year that the agreement costs the most across the 3 years. So that has an additional impact as well. As you saw from the slide, the budget carries an additional approximately $230,000 in capital needs. So that's That is in large part the difference. And on the school side, one more piece is in this budget does carry some additional positions as described, 2 additional elementary classroom positions to address class size issues across the district. The partial position that enhances the growth of the music curriculum, the strings portion of that. And then there is growth in the special education area where we're adding 2.5 positions, actually 3.5 positions, 2.5 of which are to create a new program so that students who previously have gone to school outside the district in specialized programs will be able to stay in the district and receive their specialized learning programs with their classmates here in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Hello, I'm Bill Mullen and 9 Wilson Lane. So I think I've been on 10 years or so on the Finance Committee and various other things. And I was curious, first of all, thank you for all the hard work you've done this year. But I've never heard these words before. Did I hear this right? Health insurance costs went down 5%?
Yes.
And if that's true, could you explain how that happened? Thank you.
Mary, do you want to speak to that since you're on the...
That happened primarily for 2 reasons.
Wait. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I beg your pardon.
That is a resident of Boxborough, and she is not a staff member. So
she
if
can't
you want
speak to
Mary
it.
to speak, we will have to have town meeting vote to allow her to speak.
I can have someone else. I apologize. I'll have Marie come and answer that.
Sorry, but those are the rules.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. Didn't we do a blanket recommendation?
Town staff and school staff was the words of the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. There are 2 primary reasons why health insurance is going down this year. One is we've just completed another round of collaborative health insurance negotiations with all 8 unions from the town and the schools. And we've added an HSA plan for employees as well as a deductible and higher co-pays with agreement with all of the unions. And the second is that the Health Insurance Trust over the last several years has a pretty healthy reserve balance that has allowed us to keep our health insurance costs from growing.
Thank you. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Okay. I wasn't going to ask a question, but when he asked who voted no, I was kind of dismayed that nobody wanted to speak. I mean, this is a legislative body. Personally, I don't have time to come to committee meetings and see what's going on. I don't have time to even go into the details of the numbers. I'm just assuming that everybody's doing a good job. And roughly speaking, we're going to vote for it, but I mean, nobody's batting 1,000 here. So if there's something bad about the budget and you know about it, let us know. I mean, we are paying for it. So, I mean, I was going to vote for the budget anyway, but then he asked a simple question, and nobody has even one thing negative to say about this budget. I mean, is it that perfect? I mean, it's not too much to ask. So, I mean, it's going to be voted yes, right? But since I don't have the time to go into the details, if 3 people voted no, it tells me it's not a perfect budget. So, what is it? Thank you.
Thank you. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
I'd like to ask, this is Mike Farquhar from 9 Agawam Road. I'd like to ask a very tough question for all the members on the school committee. Please pay attention. This budget, as I can see it, contains no provisions for the hardening of our schools, for hiring guards, or qualifying those teachers that would like to carry concealed weapons to defend our students. I'm pretty familiar with the Acton Boxborough school system. My kid went through the whole thing. In light of recent events, school committee members did you consider for next year's budget the hardening of classrooms, hiring of guards, and qualification of those teachers who choose not to be undefended targets? I'd like to see a polling of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Ms. Chris Demurthy, would you like to respond to that?
So we have had discussions. We have an extremely robust security plan in place, working with the Acton Police Department and the Boxborough Police Department. We have 3 resource officers, one that is primarily working with the elementary kids, and we have a resource officer that works with the junior high and high school kids, and we have an evening resource officer. The committee, and I will, if you would like to, anyone who would like to speak up, but the committee has taken a strong stance that we do not want to arm our teachers. We feel very strongly that the steps that we have taken are the appropriate steps. Is there anyone on the committee that would like to say anything? But you can't be from Boxborough, sorry. I just found that out. Anybody from Acton want to say anything? Okay. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Yes, I have a question. There was some discussion in the overview by Mr. Noon of the cost of the 2 schools, twin school that's being considered. There was no mention of the future cost of the other building upgrades and renovations, which not long ago was estimated to be a total of somewhere between $250 and $300 million. What are the school committee's plans for building upgrades for the rest of the buildings, Conan, the high school, junior high, and so forth? Can you tell us?
Please.
Okay. So I'm going to start out, and then if you would like more details, I can ask JD Head to step up. But we just increased our operating budget for capital to $1 million. We expect to continue doing that, keeping it at $1 million and addressing issues at schools other than, at this very moment, Douglas, Gates, and Conant. Depending on what comes out of the feasibility, we will address whichever school is not rebuilt of the 3. We know Douglas will be one, but if whether we're not for sure, we're not completely sure. We have to go through the feasibility study as to whether we'll rebuild Gates or Conant. So right now, we're taking $1 million to use out of our operating budget each year to make necessary urgent corrections and plan to continue that. But we're also looking at what is left is approximately $14 million for repairs of the other schools, and we're still exploring how we want to address that, whether we end up going out on going and bonding it, or that's still a discussion. After town meeting, within the next couple of months, we plan to establish a group through our budget subcommittee to look specifically at all of those needs and map out a very clear plan of how and when and what we are going to be addressing.
I'm sorry, but you had that plan. I was in this room not long ago, a couple of years ago, 18 months ago, and the details of every building renovation from the high school on down was provided by the consultants you hired. So what else needs to be done? You know all this.
So that you're exactly right, but the estimate that we were given was based on every possible things we'd like to have. So what we then had to do as a school district is take that number and really look at what are the things that we actually need to do. So when you quoted, it was I think $120 million, we're down to $14 million. And now, as we are in the process of deciding at what portions we can pay for annually through our operating budget, and what other pieces that we need to look at to go out to bond. And JD, please feel free to step up if I missed something. Okay.
Well, you didn't answer my question, but it's too complicated for this meeting.
I'm happy to meet with you offline to try to help understand the question.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Yes, Dr. John Blue, Briar Hill Road. Does the school committee feel that the current proposed budget funding will operationally, optimally support a difficult problem seen not only locally but nationally and internationally of increased anxiety, stress, depression, and self-injury to our students, our children? I know it's a difficult question, but I feel it should be at least answered.
Yep, thank you for that.
Please do.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
So one of our key, I wish, my clicker's not working, but okay, that's fine. One of the key part of our goals, our vision, is student health and wellness. So many of the steps that we have taken have tried to address just that issue in terms of homework-free weekends, or we've moved from simply a final exam at the end of the year to now breaking it up to mid-years and finals. But in this particular budget, I have to say one of the most exciting pieces for us is the fact that we are able to start our high school and junior high at a later time. What that does, and what all the research shows, is that addresses so many different pieces of students' anxiety, stress, mental health. So yes, in this budget, this is one of the key things that we are trying to address, and hopefully through that.
I agree with that and seen the data on it. Do you have staff within school adequately delineated who are also available in your proposed budget?
Yeah, so last year we did add 1 or 2 counselors, 2 counselors at the high school level. We do feel at this point that we are adequately staffed. Getting it, yes, yes. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Thank you. Scott Smyers, 382 Central Street. I have, I think, 3 questions. There was a graphic shown during the presentation with the projections from, I think, 2 years ago, then 1 year ago, then this year.
Yes.
Were they all done by the same method, same person?
So we've used 2 different firms, but yes, they were all done by the same method. And really, the reason that you're seeing that shift is because of the changes in the economy and the tremendous turnover in housing that we've seen. It's completely unexpected.
Seems like I've heard that it's unexpected very regularly. And then second, you said that there's a huge increase in English as a second language. Another person asked about that. But my question is specifically, how many languages are we dealing with? Is it a handful or is it really broad?
So English language learners come in with a variety of different home languages, but that's not the purpose of the program. It's an English immersion program. So we're not looking to hire, we're not talking about teachers that teach in whatever students' native language is. We work with students so that they learn English and learn as quickly as possible, depending on what level that they come in at.
Yeah, I understand.
So I can't tell you exactly what the variety of languages are, but that doesn't impact this level of staff that we have. Everyone, I mean, it's a program not based on home birth languages, but it's based on teaching English.
Yes, but it would be more, if you had
Oh.
a smaller diversity of languages you're dealing with, you could teach them more efficiently than if you have 25 different languages.
So Mr. McAuliffe just came up and said our incoming kindergarten class has 32 different languages.
32.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
So thank you for that.
And then I know, and I hear it repeatedly, and I agree with it, that the wellness aspect of the programs administered in the schools and trying to figure out the best way to cope, to have the students so they have as little stress and a stressful time in their lives going forward. Unnecessary stresses should be removed, and then help them deal with certain problems that they have and that all of us go through when we're growing up. But I don't hear anything about how the very regularly changing MCAS, MCAS 2.0, new state frameworks, new, the individual principals coming up with revolutionary teaching things that they're trying to get everybody excited about and trying to break new barriers in teaching, which sometimes seem like just the same old things we've been doing for a while, like the exhibition learning turns out to be, it's a group project and you present it at the end. They've been doing that for a while. So how does these state required frameworks and the MCAS 2.0 that changes every time it comes along, how's that factored into your decision as a school committee? Is there any coping with that or pushback to the state saying we don't need it changing all the time? Or we just give them gum?
No, I mean, there have been, when we've been given an option whether to opt out of changes, we've chosen to opt out of those changes. But a lot of what comes down, we don't actually have a lot of say in. Yes, there has been information that the committee has pushed back on, but we do have to follow the state guidelines and what comes down from the State House.
The state tells us what to do. All right.
Do you want to speak to that, Paul?
I do. A couple of years ago when
You got to pull the mic closer.
Oh, sorry. A couple of years ago when Park was a big issue, our curriculum director pointed out a number of flaws with the program that the state was trying to implement. We were not the only one, and the school committee fully supported that because they were logical and they made sense. We resisted that and didn't jump on the Park bandwagon because we were concerned about the kids, the students, having trouble just with the tool of taking the test. So we have been resistant to some of the things that the state has been doing, to the point where MCAS 2.0 falls better in line with what we feel the students can work with, and so now we're working with the MCAS 2.0. But we don't just take what the state delivers. If it doesn't make sense for what we're doing, we push back.
Well, in 2015, when we met in this room and voted to go back to eliminate MCAS, or not MCAS, but Park at that time, the school committee completely ignored that non-binding resolution and didn't do anything about this. People that were unanimous, or not unanimous, but the majority voted saying we do not like these changes, and now the state keeps moving the ball and changing it around and changing the name. So my main point is, please take it seriously. It's affecting the wellness of the students, and it's a lot of unnecessary stress for them. All right? Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Alan Nitschelm. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. So I just want to comment on what the superintendent said and then make a statement. I asked about why the budget for the schools went up higher than the town, and he mentioned busing. He said busing was going up like $500,000, but then they'd be getting like $400,000 back in reimbursement. And he mentioned a couple new staff people, and I think the town had a couple of new staff people on the list also, as I recall. So again, I don't think my question is answered, or I could try and answer it, which is personnel costs in the school are just out of control, and that's the answer. And so just want to make that clear. So I'm going to be voting against the school budget. The reason is because I do not trust the leadership of the school. Amy, well, the fifth name down on the left, Amy, the chair of the school committee, was at this very auditorium approximately a year ago, and people came, hundreds of people came, to ask her and the school committee why our superintendent was leaving without an adequate explanation. And we did not get an answer. In fact, we were misled intentionally by the school committee. If we are going to condone that type of behavior, we are going to get the representatives that we deserve. And I think I'm asking for the chair of the school committee to resign, and until she resigns, I'm not going to be voting for any school budget or any further expenditure. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Would you like me to respond to that?
No. I'm recognizing the speaker at microphone number 2.
Astrid Trostorf, Mohegan Road. I'd like to move the question.
Motion to move the previous question has been made and seconded. That requires a 2/3 vote, no debate. All those in favor of cutting off debate, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Nay. I think the motion passes. So we will now vote on the motion before us as part of Article 5. This takes a majority to pass. All those in favor of the motion as read previously, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed to the motion say nay. Nay. The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
We will now move to Article 6, which is the Minuteman School Assessment. Mrs. Norse moves that the town appropriate and transfer $1,303,814 from free cash to fund the fiscal year 2019 assessment of the Minuteman Regional School District. Do I have a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Ms. Norse, you may speak to your presentation. I believe we agreed you would have 8 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Pam Nurse, and I have the honor of serving as Acton's representative on the Minuteman School Committee. I'd like to introduce Kevin Mahoney, who is the Assistant Superintendent at Minuteman, and Amy Perot, who is the Director of Special Education. And I would just like to say that approximately 47% of the students at Minuteman receive special education services, and it is the highest percentage of any public high school in Massachusetts. It's a very exciting time at Minuteman, and I'd like to very quickly talk about some of the things that are going on. In
Ms. Nurse, I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you. We need to have the timer going to 8 minutes, please. Thank you. Sorry.
In 2016, voters in the Minuteman District, including Acton, approved funding for a new school building. The new building is under construction and is on target to open in August of 2019. Academically, Minuteman has a lot to be proud of. A hallmark of the education program at Minuteman is the integration of academic courses with technical and vocational courses. Minuteman has 16 career and technical education programs, including 2 new programs, advanced manufacturing and multimedia engineering. We have 35 students from Acton in Minuteman, and I'd like to just very quickly talk about some of their achievements over the last year. 9 of those students are in the 10th grade. And those students took the MCAS, and all 9 scored proficient in advanced in English and science, and 6 out of the 9 scored proficient in advanced in math. Very proud of those scores. 6 of them are taking part in sports: golf, hockey, lacrosse, soccer, and basketball. 2 of our Acton students are girls in the STEM program, and one of these students won first place in a Skills USA district competition in aerobic automation. One Acton student was a National Merit semifinalist to be eligible for a National Merit Scholarship, and another Acton student in Minuteman's Design and Visual Communication program won an honorable mention in a poster design contest by the Middlesex District Attorney Office. We have 3 students participating in Minuteman's Cooperative Education Program, and in the first term, we had 6 Acton students receive high honors, 10 received honors. In the second term, 3 received high honors, 10 received honors, work that I think we should all be very proud of. I would like to turn to Mr. Mahoney, who is going to walk us through the Minuteman budget and Acton's portion of the assessment for the budget.
Mr. Moderator? Mr. Moderator?
Yes, I'm sorry. We were just checking to make sure you were okay to speak. But we did vote at the beginning to vote all town and staff. I believe you're a member of the staff at Minuteman, correct?
Correct.
Then I think you're okay.
Thank you. Good evening. As previously reported in the Finance Committee Chairman's report to town meeting, one of the major drivers in the Minuteman budget is the debt service associated with the bonding for the new school project. As you can see in this year's Minuteman budget, we're looking at debt service of about $2.1 million. So just to put that the total budget into some context, if we exclude the debt service related to the project, we'd be looking at just over $19 million operating budget, which is about 3.8% over fiscal year 18. When we look at it in total, the fiscal 19 budget is about $21,160,000, and assessments to communities is up $2.2 million, and about 1.4 of that 2.2 is, again, related to the debt service. The budget history for the last 4 years, we've been lowering the budget over the last 3 years as we right-size ourselves to enter into the new school. We're looking at a total enrollment of 628 is our target enrollment for the new school, and we've been adjusting our cost accordingly. Again, in the far right column, the $21 million includes that $2 million associated with debt service. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen such a drastic increase in our budget. So in terms of the town of Acton, we're looking at the total assessment is $1,303,814, of which and that's an increase over the current fiscal year assessment of $230,886. Of that $230,000, $133,178, as listed on the second to last line in the slide, is attributed to the building project debt. Roughly $98,000 is associated with the operating budget. Some of the drivers on our staffing costs is our compensation obligations, which is about a 3% increase in our salary cost, 1.6 in our total budget. It's basically our collective bargaining agreement with our Teachers Association, which is about 2% plus step increases included in there as well, plus a couple of additional staff personnel. We're expecting a 3% increase in our health insurance and a retirement assessment of $50,000 in compliance with the PARAC funding schedule. In terms of other major items, our stabilization account, we're funding $300,000, which is $200,000 over what we've typically funded in prior budgets, primarily to provide necessary funding. Once we occupy the school building, we recognize that we will be short for furniture, fixtures, and equipment that would qualify under the MSBA reimbursement formula, because their formula for reimbursing those items is consistent whether you're an elementary school, a middle school, a high school, or a vocational technical school. Given the equipment the equipment needs that we have, we recognize that we're going to fall a little bit short and are providing some funding to meet that obligation. So in terms of our revenue plan, total budget $21,160,000. Some of the revenue sources, a slight increase in Chapter 70, We're expecting a decrease of $54,000 in regional transportation, primarily due to the fact that we've reduced our district from 16 towns down to 10, so we anticipate costs to go down and our reimbursement should subsequently go down as well. Slight increase in prior year tuition. We're committing $540,000 to our certified E&D. On the expenditure side, again, some of the drivers, there's $321,000 roughly in student instructional services, again, related to compensation of staff. In our insurance line, it's up about $227,000, primarily due to health insurance and the Minuteman retirement assessment. And the 7,000 line asset acquisition is up $137,000. Part of that is the $200,000 associated with the stabilization account. So when we look at enrollment, our total high school enrollment is about 538,000. As far as the town of Acton goes, it's 33 high school students. When we look at how our freshman enrollment is trending, you can see the dark blue lines over the last number of years. We've seen an increase in our in-district freshman enrollment and a subsequent decrease in our out-of-district enrollment, which we see as a positive sign as we move to hit the target number of 628 students. When we look at Acton historically, you'll note that we've had roughly, going back 12, 15 years, it was roughly 37, 36 students. We saw a dip around 2009, 2010. It's starting to trend upward a little bit. That number on the screen is 35 because there are two postgraduate programs along with the two postgraduate students, along with the 33 high school students that are currently enrolled. Just a brief word on our building project update. As Ms. North mentioned earlier, we're very excited about the project. It's going very well on time and on budget. We're very much looking forward to moving in. This month, we'll be celebrating our so-called topping off event where we place our final beam on the superstructure, and we're really looking forward to that. We expect over the winter to have the building weather tight. We hope to be starting the move-in process maybe a year from now, and we're excited to be opening the new school in next August of 19. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Does the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation on the Minuteman assessment?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends approval of this article.
And the Finance Committee?
Acton is a strong supporter of vocational education for Acton students as well as students throughout the Commonwealth. Now, the Minuteman Vocational High School is a center of excellence for vocational education and is managing its building program with an aggressive schedule and efficient budget controls. It is ahead of schedule and on budget. The Acton School Committee will be well served if they follow this Minuteman example. We recommend this warrant article.
Thank you. I will now open it up to questions and debate. I see no one running quickly to any microphones. I guess that means we're ready to vote. Okay, the motion is there on the screen. I'll call for the vote. This takes a majority to pass. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll move to Article 7, which is the Community Preservation Program appropriations. And before I read the motion, while the members of the committee come down, I'm going to explain the way we're going to handle this, because there was a little bit of confusion, I think, last year. So just so we're clear at the outset, we will handle this article the same way we do the consent agenda, which means after the chair of the Community Preservation Committee gives his presentation and we hear the recommendations, before we open it up for debate, I will read the letter and the name of each project. And town meeting members who wish to debate those should hold those particular projects. All others for which there is no interest in holding, we will vote as a group immediately thereafter, and then we'll open it up one by one for debate for each of the individual projects that are held. So I will read the motion. Mr. Foster moves that the town, 1, transfer to and from the Community Preservation Fund and appropriate, reappropriate, or set aside for current or later appropriation $1,311,01.20, all as set forth in the article, and 2, authorize the town manager to expend or set aside amounts as set forth in the article and in compliance with conditions to be noted in the Community Preservation Committee's award letters. Do I have a second? Second. Mr. Foster, I see you're being very penny wise here, so down to the 20th of the cent, right? So you may speak to your article. You have 10 minutes, I think, by prior agreement.
Yes.
And then we'll go through the consent process.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, town members. My name is Walter Foster. I serve as the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. And with us tonight is the very large committee. To my left is Bill Ellsbury, Ray Jacoby, Amy Green, Dean Charter, Tori Byer, Carolyn Kilpatrick, Joe Will, Greg Johnson, Nancy Cobb, and Peter Berry. The Community Preservation Committee is responsible for the administration of the Community Preservation Fund. The monies are raised through a surcharge on taxpayers here in Acton, and there are some matching funds. By statute, the funds can be allocated to projects which support the acquisition, the creation, and preservation of open space, historical resources, community housing, and land for recreational use. Each year, 10% of whatever the fund is coming in, the revenues of that year must be spent on 3 of those categories: open space, historical resources, and affordable housing. So on page 36 of your warrant, you'll find the numbers. The first slide is really just what is the fund as of that the committee had for this year's appropriation. You'll see that the surcharge collected was the $956,000 and some change. The matching part from the state, which is comprised of fees paid at the Registry of Deeds for all of the participating cities and towns that have adopted the CPA, was $164,000 and change from the state. There was $11,000 in interest earned on the balance from last year. There was unencumbered funds that are come over from last year at $56,000, and we've recaptured for projects that are either completed or and didn't spend all of their monies. There were $93,000 that was returned to the CP fund. So the total balance is the $1,281,000. In addition to that, we have 3 set-aside accounts. One is the open space set-aside that generally we appropriate into so that monies are available for those purchases. That stands at $1.5 million and change. And the historical set-aside at $40,000, and the affordable community housing set-aside was at $25,000. On page 36, 37 of the warrant is this slide. So I'm going to walk you through each of the projects, but this is the listing of the proposed appropriations for town meeting members to vote on. Starting with the first one is Project A there just by Alpha. This is it's a set of monies that was actually returned. We had funded in 2009 some Civil War artifacts and historical resources rehabilitation and preservation at the library. They finished up that project and had $823.10 left over. Because that comprised part of that 10% that I mentioned in the funding year for 2009, it must be appropriated into the set-aside, and you'll see at a later project for this evening, we're going to be allocating that to be spent on one of the historical projects tonight, that is the Hosmer House. For the open space set-aside, this year we're recommending an appropriation of $500,000. This will supplement the existing set-aside fund of $1.5 million and bring that to just over $2 million, which, like at December where town meeting voted, we purchased the new town road, those types of things for the future. In the category of affordable housing, We're recommending a $50,000 appropriation. This is to staff the Regional Housing Service Office. It buys up to 320 hours. It's for 2 years. And it's a collaboration with the various cities and towns that surround Acton to have the administrative and support staff to do all of that you see above, the housing inventory, the local project consultation, homeowner workshops such as for first-time homeowners, and other aspects of the administrative side, and that would be funded again, as I said, for 2 years. In addition, we're recommending $75,000 for the development of acquisition funds to create affordable units for low-income seniors, people with disabilities, and with families for the Acton Housing Authority. These funds are used for the exploration of possible sites, feasibility studies, preliminary site planning, and pre-development costs. There is no specific project associated with this particular appropriation. It goes into a fund that could be used for all of those purposes by the AHA. By way of an example, a prior appropriations into this fund helped to construct the affordable housing at Willisley Village that leveraged over $3.3 million of state and federal funding. In addition, in the affordable housing category, we're recommending an appropriation of $75,000 for the McCarthy Village siding and decking. This would help rehabilitate and preserve 23 units that is comprised largely of low-income seniors and people with disabilities. It's located in Sachem Way. Also, in the affordable housing category, we have, for the second time, Habitat for Humanity has come to town. And in addition, some of you might recall the River Street house that was built by Habitat. These are greatly leveraged projects where, of course, the homeowners themselves and many volunteers help to do the actual building. So the project number here is for the $91,650. It would be for a 2-family house for affordable housing. And again, greatly leveraged. The total project cost is $186,000 with volunteer labor and the like. This happens to be in a historical district as well. So you'll see at F1 and F2, which can be found again on page 36, 37 of your warrant, that half of those monies, or a good portion of those, are coming from under the historical category, because this is a historically eligible building, and the remainder are from the affordable housing piece. In addition, on the historical side, many of you are familiar with the Hosmer site. We have a recommended appropriation for $188,546. This would help to redesign both the campus and to make it visually more accessible and usable by anybody who would like to go there. For many people know it's Acton's Historical Society. It's been the home for over 42 years. In addition to making it both more usable and having some spaces where people can come, they're going to be working very closely with the schools, because there's pedestrian pathways that really connect up to, of course, Kelly's Corner and the like. And this will be done consistent with the various Kelly Corners infrastructure improvements that are also happening. Under historical, the committee is recommending $25,000 used for the Kennedy building. This is at the Woodlawn Cemetery, on one of our main cemeteries near the center of town. It helps to rehabilitate and renovate the historical resources and make it ADA accessible. The total project cost for this building is $230,000. The town, as well as the cemetery commissioners, have funded the remainder of this. And it's designated by both the Acton and the Mass Cultural Resource List, and the Acton Historical Commission has determined it as part of the cultural resource for the entire community, and that being the Woodlawn Cemetery. In addition, specifically for Woodlawn, an appropriation for $31,000. This would rehabilitate all of the gorgeous gates that you see entering into Woodlawn. There's a set of stone piers. There are 4 at the west gate and 2 at each of the Weatherby and east gates. Under historical, for $10,500 is to restore some degrading, J. Arthur degrading, meaning that their mold is coming at them, but they're very nice prints. J. Arthur Davis etchings. Many of you might know him as kind of Acton's painter in residence. It would preserve over 14 of those etchings and have them framed to be shown in the library. They were donated to the library by some family members of Mr. Davis, and he was also the Library of Acton for many, many years. In addition, under the open space category, whenever we're purchasing open space, there are administrative costs associated with that, which is title research, the legal work to draft the conservation restrictions that must go on all of these properties and the like, that we have had a kind of a dedicated fund for just those aspects as compared to the actual purchase price of the open space. That's down to around $17,000. So this is a request for $30,000 that would go into, if you will, those available funds. In open space and recreation for $10,012, it's accessibility improvements to Camp Acton. Many of you might know of this property as the old Boy Scout land. It would allow individuals with disabilities to enjoy all the thrills of camping outdoors by compacting the surface that was to the first campsite, which is near and adjacent to the parking area, would make it wheelchair accessible on tent platforms, have raised campfire rings, and of course accessible picnic tables and the like. Under recreation for $76,000, this would be the completion of the TJ O'Grady Skate Park, really very close to where we're sitting here this evening. This is in red. You'll see there's like a triangle portion. Many of you have driven by it. Anybody who's attended the lower fields knows that this is very in great use. It's a great resource for anybody and children of all ages. This last piece is this triangle piece that helps perform and complete, if you will, the skate course, which I understand, I'm not a skateboarder, is very popular in the west suburbs, and would finish up and have a viewing area and the like. In addition, for NARA is for $6,000 is an accessibility ramp that would be used for the stage down at NARA. It is a portable one, so it could be used for other purposes, but would bring us into compliance with the ADA and allow all performers to, of course, access the stage. As part of our provision, we're also permitted, and this year we're allocating 5% of the revenues, or $56,049, for administrative support to the committee. Goes for the accounting. There are a number of abatements that occur, various state filings, and legal services. And finally, under the Right Hill, this is a purchase of open space land that was made and that we bonded for. The third annual payment of that of $85,000 for the purchase price of the Right Hill is coming due, and that will come from the open space set aside. And as you've heard by previous speakers here this evening, there are two wonderful projects that are coming online after literally decades of funding with great leveraging. One is the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail that will connect all the way to Lowell. That'll be opening up in the spring of this year, and the Assabet River Rail Trail. They're both actually coming online and will help knit our community together. We're very proud to have been part of both that tradition and to have the support of town meeting for that. So we ask for your support here this evening on the appropriations that we've set forth.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Does the Board of Selectmen have a recommendation? Did everybody hear that? They recommend it. Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Every year, the CPC goes through extensive review of applications to make sure they're applicable to CPA guidelines and law. And ones go through legal review and debate amongst the members and what they're willing to fund projects, et cetera. And this year was no different than any other. And the Finance Committee does recommend this article and also wants to point out that the money is already there, so it's not going to add to your taxes. It's already appropriated in your tax bill on the CPA, if you look at your tax bill. So the money is there for these projects, and we fully support the article.
Thank you. What I will now do is read through each of the letters of the projects that Mr. Foster just described. If town meeting members wish to debate or vote separately any of these projects, please say hold. If you do not, then those that are not held, we will vote as a package. So, A, acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, and restoration of historic resources required set aside for meeting 10% spending from 2009 revenues. Okay. B, acquisition, creation, and preservation of open space and its rehabilitation and restoration. C1, Regional Housing Services Program, 2 years. D, Acton Housing Authority Development Acquisition Fund for New Affordable Housing Units. Did I hear a hold? Okay. One hold for D. E, yes. I thought I heard two holds. Did I? Could you stand if you held so I can see? There's one, there's two, or two. E, Acton Housing Authority, McCarthy Village siding and decking replacements. F1, Habitat for Humanity, 43-45 School Street Housing Preservation. I heard one hold. No? More than one. F2, Habitat for Humanity, 43-45 School Street Historic Preservation and Rehabilitation. I heard one hold there. I've heard two now. G1, Acton Historical Society, Hosmer House Campus Landscape Architecture Site Planning. H, Woodlawn Cemetery, Kennedy Building Rehabilitation. That is held. Woodlawn Cemetery, Historic Gates. Acton Memorial Library, Arthur Davis Etchings Restoration. K, Support of Open Space Acquisitions. L, Camp Acton Accessible Campsite. M, TJ O'Grady Skate Park Completion. N, NARA Performance Improvements. O, Administrative Appropriation Fund for CPC Direct Expenses and reimbursing the Town of Acton for administrative services. P, Wright Hill Open Space Land Acquisition Debt Service. G2, Acton Housing Society Hosmer House Campus Landscape Architecture Site Planning. And C2, Regional Housing Services Program, 2 years. I think we did that one already. So we held, yes, sir.
You said Acton Housing Society, not Acton Historical Society.
But I don't think it was held. So Acton Historical Society, excuse me. So what I have is held are D, F1, F2, and H. So we will debate those, but before we debate those, we will vote on the motion for the others as a complete package. So I will call for the vote on those that were not polled. This takes a majority to pass. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimously. We will now go to Project D, the Acton Housing Authority Development Acquisition Fund for New Affordable Housing Units. And Mr. Foster, if you have anything to add to that, or if not, I will simply open it up to debate.
I do not, Mr. Moderator.
Okay. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Tara Fredericks from West Acton. I'm not against giving Acton Housing Authority money. I think we should give them more money. But I think the money should be used to buy down existing condo units and existing small houses and not used to create more development and growth. We're already headed for a water crisis. We already have these units in play in our community already. These people need help now to put money into development plans on sites where we haven't even decided we want housing. I was at the meeting when they were talking about what to do with this, and they're like, oh, we'll put the Walker, the River Street, all these different projects. And I thought to myself, gosh, you know, this is years in the making. Why not just use this money to buy down units right now? Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3. I'm sorry, the now it's on.
Nancy Kolb, 41 Quabog Road. I'm also a member of the Acton Housing Authority. Acton, Massachusetts, and actually the nation is facing a crisis on housing, in particular senior housing. Seniors the rate of seniors in Acton is increasing fast. Between 2000 and 2016, the senior population in Acton rose 51%. Also, the senior population has one of the highest groups for the highest rate of poverty. The difficulty that the Acton Housing Authority has with buying down condos is that we can't leverage CPC money. We leveraged a similar amount in '09 that we're asking for this year into over $3.3 million in order to build Whittlesley Village. There is no way to leverage federal and state funds to buy down condos. And it would take about $45 million to buy down enough condos to meet the 10% requirement for low-income housing. Even that, I don't think, would meet the need that we have and will have in upcoming years to house seniors who will need accessible housing, who will need affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Lauren Rosenzweig Morton, 26 Marshall Path. I think that it's really important for us to plan for the kind of housing needs that we have within the town. I think the biggest compliment to this town is a lot of the seniors that have lived here all their lives don't want to move to another town. They want to stay here. Also, young people, believe it or not, do want to continue to live here. They go to school elsewhere and maybe have their first or second jobs in another community and realize what a special place Acton is, and they want to stay here. But unless you're making a lot of money, it's really hard to find a place to live. So I think we need to keep those kinds of things in mind, come up with housing for young people as well as seniors that are specially designed to meet their needs and desires. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
I'm Robert Whittlesey. I'm the chair of the Acton Housing Authority. You need to have, when you're putting up seed money to start a project, you need a reasonable amount of money to get it going. And we've already demonstrated how that worked in the housing we did on Station Way, which is about $300, and it leveraged some $4 million. I think if we do this again, we can't just invent a program on the spot. But I do think we can generate money for affordable housing with $75,000. It's just a start. It's a down payment for the sketching and the initial design of what you're going to do.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Chair Fredericks again, I just want to make a point of fact that if you look at the building rate, 16,000 units per year in Massachusetts, and you look at the birth and the death rate, that 2/3 of that building is not for people that are here, it's for people coming here. And I love immigrants, I want everybody to come here. But I don't want to act like it's a crisis. I want to take the part that is a crisis and address it most affordably. Because I feel like what we're doing is we go down this path and then we spend a lot of money to serve a short number of people when we could spend a medium amount of money and serve a lot of people. We're looking at a buy-down program that may have to be completely separate from Acton Housing Authority and Acton ACHC. But we're looking at, it's a possibility that it's going to be very, very affordable and at the same time protecting the forests and protecting property values and everything else. I feel like this is sort of a last century solution to a this century problem. Thank you.
And I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Hi, Ripley Martin from Barker Road. I'd like to ask the speaker at the front here if there's a way of addressing the very obvious senior housing issue, the affordable housing issue, with a more structural approach that addresses our 10% problem and the 40B issue that's related to the 10% problem in a more holistic way, so we don't end up with project after project after project, each of which require debate in this forum and a number of other forums in order to address a problem that we recognize we have a gap. We need to address that gap. And the way that it's being set up in the town right now is every single project is piecemeal. It's 8 or 10 units at a time. And oftentimes those 8 or 10 affordable housing projects, while well-intentioned, are often appropriated by a builder who's trying to attach that project to a larger project where they're going to make a considerable economic profit. And as a town, we can benchmark ourselves against a peer set of towns who've made a more structural decision around how to handle these types of issues and free up the community's time to go address other issues that also support that community. Is there a way to address this in a more structural way?
Mr. Foster?
Mr. Moderator, I'm going to ask some people who have more of the expertise as to go to your structural question. The CPA takes the applicants that come to us, including AHA, ACHC, Habitat for Humanity, but those issues which they deal with on a daily basis and throughout their entire existence, I think would be better placed to address that question.
Sure. Can I ask a specific question then? So there's a number of homes that are necessary in order to meet the 10% target. And what is the worst case scenario if a developer were to do it and give you projects versus if the town were to say, this is the one project that I want to go hit to get to my 10% number?
Okay. I know I'm not prepared to answer that. I don't serve on any of those committees, so I don't have that knowledge base. But I would throw it open to either anybody from the AHA is here. I know Nancy is on the AHA, and others from the ACHC that might be here that can take a stab at that, Mr. Moderator, because I don't have the specifics on that.
Well, can a member of your committee answer that, or if not, defer to someone else who can?
Yeah, Ray
I can take a shot. I mean, I serve as the chairman of the planning committee. You're talking about something that's outside of the control of the town. I mean, 40B is a state law.
40B is a state law because the town has not hit 10%.
Well, excuse me, please let him.
Sure.
So I think you're asking a question that this committee it's not the purview of this committee, number one, and it's a much broader issue, so I don't have a simple answer for you. So the premise of your question is a good one. I can tell you right now, being on the planning board, it's not within our purview to deal with it. That may be a Board of Selectmen issue, but it's a much broader issue, and it's definitely outside the purview of what the CPC or this article is dealing with.
Nancy.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to the speaker at microphone number 1.
Elm Street. I also work with the Commission on Disability, so I'm here to speak for both myself and the Commission. The wait for housing, I can't remember because I didn't write down the year, is a long time, 5 years or more. So we have veterans, we have people with disabilities, we have seniors, we have others that have no housing. Some of them are living in really rough conditions. And I just think this is something that should be considered when you consider this. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Nancy Tavernier, Mohawk Drive. I'm also the chairman of Acton Community Housing Corporation. I could just briefly answer the question that was being asked about a structural solution. Right now, we're roughly 350 units short of meeting our 10% goal. So the easiest way to do it would be to have a rental project of 350 units, and every single unit counts in a rental project, and we would hit 10%. Is that what we want as a community? I don't know. It involves a private developer who would have to have a piece of land, who would have to come to the town and get a permit and be allowed to build a 350-unit project, but that's the only structural way to meet 10% quickly.
Thank you. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Lisa Franklin on Windsor Avenue, and I'd like to bring us back into focus here. The current state plan for independent living has identified housing vouchers and lack of affordable, accessible housing as one of its major goals for the Commonwealth for this current cycle. And I want to say that we can dicker about exactly the best way to create the housing, but if we don't vote for the money to be put aside, then we're not going to have anything to do. So why don't we just give them the money, and then we'll all argue about the best way to spend it later.
Thank you. I see no one else standing, so we will go ahead and vote on Project D. All those in favor of funding Project D, Acton Housing Authority Development Acquisition Fund for New Affordable Housing Units, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion carries. We'll now move to Project F, which is divided into 2 sections, but I think we can treat it as a single project. I think it's the same project. Isn't that correct, Mr. Foster?
It is, Mr. Moderator.
So we'll deal with Project F, which is the Habitat for Humanity project at 4345 School Street. And this has, I believe, both a housing and a historic preservation component, which is why it's divided in 2, correct?
Correct.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4. They will.
There we are. First, I've got a question.
I'm sorry, could you identify yourself, please, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, Martin Gretz, Stowe Street.
Thank you.
I want to ask a question to make sure that I'm not going to be talking through the hat that I don't usually wear anyway. It's my understanding that Habitat for Humanity is a religious-based organization. Is that correct?
Mr. Foster?
Mr. Moderator, my understanding is no, it's not a religious-based organization.
Oh, because once when a previous appropriation came up, someone said that they're in the habit of leaving religious materials in the projects that they build. If that's not the case, then I have no objection, and whatever I was going to say will go by the board.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir.
I can only speak from what we know and what was presented to us, not the specifics of what you heard, but I don't believe Habitat for Humanity has any religious affiliation.
Well, okay. I'll let that go this time. Thanks.
Okay.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Hi, Mary Ashley, Birchridge Road, and I am a member of the local project committee for the Habitat for Humanity. I'm also in the Family Selection Committee. I just want to tell you a little bit about this project. The Habitat has taken a condemned house, which was on School Street, and rather than tear it down and try to build something new, we're reusing the existing structure. Had good bones. It's a very nice, it's a 2-family home. So we will be having 2 families living there. It's an excellent location. It's close to the train, close to playing fields. Once this project is completed, there will be 2 families, which is an increased tax revenue. The families who live there will be paying mortgages, will be paying taxes. Habitat is not a religious organization, so there is not a religious connection to that. We will be able to do this building project, and we will be able to build both sides of the house for a total of $186,000. So it's a very short money for redoing this house. It's in the Historic Preservation District, so we were working with preservation, the whatever it is, town preservation thing. So it will be...
Historical Commission, yes.
Thank you, Historical Commission, thank you. So it will be done appropriately, it will match the neighborhood. So I ask your vote yes, this is a very excellent project, thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Hi, Rebecca Jacoby, 457 Mass Ave. According to Habitat for Humanity, we are a Christian ministry, an international nonprofit, but we do affordable housing for no matter what your race or religion.
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
David Hahn, 105 School Street. I'm also chair of the Historic District Commission, so I represent that historic thing, you know.
You two should probably talk.
We've worked closely with Habitat for Humanity since the town purchased the property and then sold it to Habitat. And to us on the Historic District Commission and anybody who's interested in the town character, this is a sort of confluence of two things that we'd like to see come together, which is preserving our housing, existing historic buildings, and leveraging them into affordable housing is sort of an ideal situation. So we've met with them 4 or 5 times now. They've gone through all our requirements, and this money allows them to meet the standards in the historic districts, which are a little more stringent than your typical house. So I urge people to vote yes on this. Thank you.
And I recognize another speaker at microphone number 1.
Tara Fredericks, West Acton. I love this project. I think this is the perfect use for my tax money. It's a perfectly sustainable ideal. It's rehabbing, it's reuse, it's preservation, we're avoiding tearing down the trees. I just want to make the point that the old wood, the old wood is far more resilient and insulative than the new wood that's grown. It lasts longer, 100 years for a window as opposed to 10 years. And so I urge everybody to vote and I vote yes for this, and I urge us to do more of these. There's probably 30, I think, houses on the tax lien list that are coming up. And so with the condo buy-down program that people are talking about, we're talking also about preserving small little cottages and other small that would be torn down. So I definitely urge you to vote yes on this. Thank you.
And another speaker at microphone number 1.
Lucia Hicks, 11 Sawmill Road. Everything the previous speaker said, but given what we just heard about Habitats being a Christian organization, and given the issues that the town currently has with funding, specifically the community preservation, with funding projects that might be construed as being religious in nature, are we going to be in legal trouble if we go forward with this?
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Foster?
So as part of our process, when we get the projects that come to us every fall, we have town council give us a review on eligibility. My understanding is that there would be no impediment to the Habitat for Humanity project along the lines that you describe. And that was given to the committee as legal advice, and we acted on that.
Thank you.
I see no one else standing, so we will vote on projects F1 and F2, the Habitat for Humanity project. All those in favor of the project, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Project is approved and funded. We'll now move to the last project, Project H, the Woodlawn Cemetery Kennedy Building Rehabilitation. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Bruce Thatcher, Till Drive. The one question I have, this is a 50-year-old building, and we're calling it historic. I think many more buildings in town qualify as historic in that case. I don't question the use that they're going to use it for, but I do question the use of the community preservation funds in a historic category. Cemetery itself, fine, but not a 50-year-old building.
Mr. Foster, you want to respond to that question?
Sure. To bring you into the a bit more of the detail of the process that the committee went through. Again, on an eligibility basis, under which category any of these projects fall within. We get town council's input on that, and they informed us that this is more than eligible. It is listed on both the Mass and the state cultural resource list, and as part of all of our historical projects, we ask the Historical Commission and for the applicant to present evidence that it is treasured and identified as a historical resource here in town. In that case, the Historical Commission did provide us with that letter. That building is 50 years old. It's generally young in terms of the historical aspect, but it absolutely qualifies not only within the confines of the statute, but it is the operative building for this entire cemetery. It's where everybody goes to speak and about and to obtain, if you look to have a loved one buried there, you have access to that. So it does qualify for the historical grants that are afforded under the statute, and as such we treated it as that, even though it may not be as great as other historical structures here in town.
I see no one else standing, so we will vote on Project H, the Woodlawn Cemetery Kennedy Building Rehabilitation. All those in favor of funding the project, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The project carries. And I believe that disposes of Article 7.
It does. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you, committee members.
We will move now to Article 8. And I believe our temporary moderator is going to handle this. If everybody wants to get up and stretch for a minute while she comes down, you're welcome to do so. This article deals with capital equipment, infrastructure, and design services, and I know it's a long motion. I know. Well, I'd like to get through them.
Yeah. Okay, could we please take a seat and come back to order so we can get through this? We should sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" or something. All righty, let us move on to Article 8, Capital Equipment, Infrastructure, and Design Services, which does require a 2/3 vote to pass. Ms. Adachi moves that the town appropriate $2,367,833 to be expended by the town manager for the purposes set forth in the article, including costs incidental and related thereto, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, is authorized to borrow $2,282,830 under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7, as amended, and transfer from free cash $85,003 for the payment of interest and underwriting costs on such borrowing, and further, that any premium received upon the sale of the bonds, less the cost of preparing, issuing, and marketing them, and any accrued interest received upon the delivery of the bonds may be applied to the costs
of the project and to reduce the amount authorized to be borrowed for the project by like amount, and to further that the town manager be authorized to sell, trade, or dispose of vehicles and equipment being replaced and to expend any proceeds so received. Do I hear a second? It has been moved and seconded. Ms. Adachi, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Article 8 encompasses, okay, it's not moving. Nope, that's not what I want, okay. Okay, Article 8 encompasses 5 items, capital items, totaling about $2.3 million. They are all going to be bonded. I will get to sort of more information about the debt service that is going to result, but the bonding is going to be combined with the items in Article 9 pertaining to Kelly's Corner, which total about $500,000, so that the total amount to be bonded will be about $2.8 million. That is why the Kelly's Corner article also requires a 2/3 vote. The first item is proposed North Acton Fire Station design work. The location would be a Harris Street parcel that the town acquired, I think, a couple of years ago. It might be longer. There was a study completed earlier that confirmed what probably people who have been watching the growth in Acton realize, which is that the 3 existing stations are not going to be able to provide sufficient coverage of the just enormously expanding North Acton population. The response
Please
time
start
will
the
not
timer. You get some bonus time.
The response time will be insufficient. But this appropriation would cover, by design, they mean all architectural, engineering, and construction documents, meaning that once all that work was done, the project would be ready to go out to bid. So the town anticipates coming back to town meeting next year for construction funding, assuming that all the design work goes well. At the bottom of each slide on these items, I have a breakdown of the debt service, but you don't have to worry about that. What you should remember is the first year is interest only, so it's generally going to be much lower. The second year is when principal has to start being repaid, so that the amount will get higher, but don't worry about the numbers so much unless you're really interested in them. This is a map. North is straight up. But at the top of the map is the location of the proposed North Acton Fire Station at 68 Harris Street. The other red dots show the locations of the existing fire stations. And what the green circle indicates is a 1.5-mile radius. The blue circle, which is not so clear except in the center of town, is 2.5-mile radius. The idea is that if you have a North Acton fire station, the fire department would be able to have a response time of 6 minutes or less throughout the entire town, with about 4 minutes being attributable to drive time. And I would add, by the way, that with regard to the fire station project, I anticipate that as things move along, that there will be public information sessions. We did have at least one inquiry or expression of interest about the fire station project from a resident who lives in that area. So as with all major projects, we typically do have public outreach sessions. The next item is a fire engine. It has a 10-year expected life. This is a 15-year-old fire engine, and it's a pumper truck. It is important to have, obviously, dependable vehicles, and the existing truck, actually, though it's 15 years old, would not be put out of service or junked. It would be transferred to second alarm status, so it's a backup truck. But the new truck would be used for a lot of the primary work. It is important that it be reliable in large part, or in part, because it carries critical emergency medical equipment, so that the firefighter/EMT getting to a location and discovering that there's a medical emergency can actually start treating the patient before the ambulance arrives. And again, the debt service is at the bottom. I should mention that of all of these items have different expected lives. The fire engine is one of the 10-year expected lives, so the bonds would be 10 years. That's the way bonding works. And the next item is HVAC replacement at the south and west Acton fire stations. There was a study some years ago, it was several years ago, of all the buildings, the town buildings in Acton, and HVAC systems in the 3 fire stations were identified as a top priority for replacement. At that time, I think that there was some thought to overhauling the 3 stations, but that's probably going to take a little more time to develop. In the meantime, the HVAC systems really need to be replaced because they are very old, the buildings date back to the 60s and the 50s, and the firefighters who are on shift don't just work there, they live there, they cook there. And having been on a tour of the fire stations, I can vouch for the fact that the HVAC systems are in terrible shape, and it would be nice to see the rest of the fire stations renovated as well, so that the firefighters have decent places to stay. Complete Streets Improvement Program, I think that there's a misunderstanding about what Complete Streets is. It's not about improving the streets so cars can go faster. This is a policy that the selectmen adopted in 2014, and the idea is you want to provide safe public access for different forms of transportation. Transportation not just being cars, but including bicycles and also walking. And it could be, people pushing strollers or people in wheelchairs, but the whole point is to make it safe for people moving around in different forms to be able to do that without worrying about, in large part, motor vehicles. So among the things that you want to do is introduce traffic calming measures. We are trying to create bike lanes. I think it would be nice one day if we had barriers between the motor vehicles and the bike lanes, but right now we have a painted stripe that protects the bikes. In any event, I think that the idea is that this is a 5-year, kind of a planned 5-year effort to improve the traffic conditions in our town, making traffic calming measures. The town did get a grant, I think 2016, 2017, that helped with some of the low-hanging fruit, traffic calming measures, and I think that the flashing speed warning signs are sort of what are considered to be low-cost traffic calming measures. But they didn't get a grant from the state last year, so they're looking for a fund that they can draw on to continue improving conditions throughout the town. Apparently, there is a lot of interest, according to our Department of Public Works Director, in traffic calming throughout the town, because there are a lot of roads where people, in the view of the residents, drive too fast. And so I think that this will be a project that will gradually improve the conditions for everybody, and especially pedestrians and bicyclists and anybody who's not driving a car. And then finally, Acton Center traffic design. This was a project that was a subject of a lot of discussion, public meetings. There was a consultant that recommended a mix of sort of what I call low-hanging fruit, low-cost mitigation measures, such as the traffic calming, the flashing signs that are outside of the town center historic district. If you drive down Route 27, you'll see the flashing lights, or at least I do, because apparently I drive too fast. But they work because I hold to 30 miles an hour, which is the speed in the district, and I think it's a good thing to have. It's a very low-key thing to do. But the next step is to have more design work to work on the recommended reconfiguration of the roads in the town center. And here are the current conditions. You can just see Concord Road branching 2 ways. You have Route 27 kind of going diagonally, crossing the Newtown Road, Woodbury Lane. And anybody who's driven through there and tried to make a left turn pretty much from any one of those roads knows how difficult it can be with or without traffic. And then if you're driving from Concord Road north and trying to cut across 27 to Newtown Road, just very complicated and unnecessarily messy because of the design. So that's what this design work would do. About the debt service, this is our current debt outstanding. The left-hand column is fiscal 16. Down here, the shortest stub is fiscal 22. So we're anticipating a dramatic drop in our outstanding debt in within 8 years. And so it's a good time. It's not going to be burdensome as it might be for us to take on a little more debt. And so this is the breakdown of the anticipated debt service, at least for the first few years, for Article 8 as well as Article 9. The first year cost would be $85,000 just for Article 8. For the two combined, it would be $100,000. As I said, that's interest only. Fiscal 20, you start repaying principal, so the amount would jump to, in the case of Article 8, $460,000, and Article 8 and Article 20 would be about $582,000. Fiscal 21, the amounts are more or less in the same ballpark. It's my understanding from the Finance Department that although the amounts aren't the same from year to year, the way they are with a mortgage, that they're probably going to drop gradually as the years continue. And as I said, some of these bonds are 5 years, some of them are 10 years, so some of them will get paid off sooner. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the meeting wishing to speak?
I should mention that the Board of Selectmen recommended this article.
Oh, yes, Finance Committee.
Yes, you have heard this evening various comments about the schools, the Finance Committee, and the Selectmen looking at the long-term financial capital needs of the town. Two of these things, the fire station and the HVAC improvements at South and West, fit into this category, and this Finance Committee strongly recommends them.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone 3.
I have a couple of questions. Are we talking about a fourth fire station or a replacement of an existing one?
Go ahead.
We're talking about a fourth fire station for
Okay.
now.
Or there's going to be more?
No. I mean, this is just a
Fifth,
fourth fire
sixth?
station. We're not building a station to replace one of the three. That's
Okay,
right.
that fourth fire station will require additional manpower, fireperson power.
Fireman power, that's fine. Firefighter.
Okay, pick whatever you want. What is the estimate of the cost of such additional person power?
Yes.
Madam Moderator, I actually don't have the answer. Mr. Manager, do you know, or does the...
The fire chief, I think, may have a staffing plan that he could share with us.
Is he in the room? Oh, yes, he is.
Here he comes.
Yes, please do.
This is Fire Chief Hart. Oops.
Excellent. I'm Robert Hart, your fire chief. To answer your question, that currently we can plan on staffing a fourth station with our current staff, although not ideal. We would like to expand with 8 additional personnel over the next couple of years to get us to that point. So typically I would ask for 4 personnel next fiscal year and 4 beyond that, hopefully to coincide with launching or opening of the station. So yes, it does take more personnel. We're a growing community. We have a lot more runs than we had since our last significant increase in staff, which was in '88.
Does anybody have a dollar amount? FinCom? Anybody?
Ms. Adati.
Madam Moderator, I don't know if there's anybody, if you can't answer it, it may be too early for us to, I don't know what
Well,
do you have a
I don't have
range?
we're about 600,000 for 8 personnel currently, today's contracts.
And also, I assume we're going to need more fire trucks and other such equipment. Does anybody have an estimate of the cost of actually putting vehicles into that fire station?
So currently our equipment needs are met with the proposed fire engine here today, and we don't anticipate an uptick in equipment.
Okay, well, you know, at 735,000 per engine, it can add up, but I guess we'll find out eventually. Next, somewhat different question is, if we're going to spend considerable amount of money on HVAC upgrades, new equipment is considerably more efficient. Has anybody made any dollar estimates on the savings that we will get from yearly utility bills? Because possibly it would pay to do all 3 existing stations if the savings cover the cost, which they often do.
Madam Moderator, can I ask a clarification? You're asking whether we've determined the cost of overhauling the 3 buildings as opposed to just replacing the HVAC systems for now? Is that?
The savings derived from installing new, much more efficient equipment, which costs less to operate. A lot of us do that at our homes, and it's fairly easy to calculate. Has anybody figured it out?
Yes, Madam Moderator, let me see if there's somebody. Do you happen to know?
I did not. That's municipal properties.
Oh, municipal properties. Is there a representative from Muni Props here?
Okay, I guess the answer is we don't know. Well, I am suggesting that it may be worth doing that kind of calculation, because we may find out that it's a good idea to do more than just those 2 fire stations, that the cost is not that much when you offset the upfront cost with the yearly savings. Just a thought.
Madam Moderator, I neglected to mention something. The town center fire station had its HVAC replaced, I think, in the past year or so. So I don't know if you were anticipating that we should upgrade to other upgrades to other town buildings of HVAC, or if you were thinking that the 3rd fire station still needed to be upgraded. It has been done, so.
I wasn't aware of that, but if we have done it, we probably should know what the savings are, but, you know, it's late.
We'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone number 4.
John Peterson, Jackson Drive. I have a comment. I was pleased to see that in the body of the article referring to the fire station, it's referred to as fire EMS. Given the relative number of EMS calls relative to fire calls and the value of those emergency medical services to the town of Acton, it would seem to me that the article would be appropriately headed fire EMS, and likewise in the municipal budget supplement, that the fire department recognize that a critical part of its mission is in fact EMS, and that be recognized in all the documents associated with these activities.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone number 1.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ira Wolf. I live on Acorn Park Drive. My 2 boys came into this world thanks to Acton Fire EMS Rescue. I am fully support of a new station, new equipment. Response time is of the essence for both personal emergencies, and also given that a fire doubles in size every 30 seconds. Having an additional station to increase the response time, I think, is essential to our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone number 4.
Deborah Symes, Concord Road. I do not know whether in the due diligence folks have done on replacing these HVAC systems, non-fossil fuel iterations were considered. So, for instance, obviously for the cavernous place where the giant trucks live, you know, an air source heat pump and a mini split is not going to do it. But for the, you know, upstairs living quarters and other more contained and spaces, I would encourage the town to investigate, in particular, air source heat pump and mini or multi-split systems, because A, you get a whole bunch of the energy that the system uses free from the environment, and B, even though the upfront cost may be a bit more, the operational costs are significantly lower, and they don't make emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone number 1.
Tara Fredericks, West Acton. One of my comments was going to be what Deborah said, so thank you, Deborah. I want to make note about the fire station that this is one of the costs of growth. The growth does not pay, and we're going to have to end up doing it ourselves. So it doesn't come from the new tax revenues. It ends up being an extra cost to the rest of us. Anyway, but I want to comment about the Complete Streets Improvement Program, because I've been at some of these meetings, and people refer to, they use terms like improve the traffic flow when they're reading the official documents. But in person, people are talking across the table like, let's speed it. I don't want to wait that long at that stop sign, and I have to hurry up and get to my yoga lesson. And so I feel like we have to make a conscious effort to truly make it about calming and not about encouraging or accommodating speeding. And I'm not saying that we are, but I would like to consider this progressive planning thing that they're doing in Germany now, which is proving to work out really well, and it's removing all of the signs and everything else, because psychologists have shown that when you have all of these signs that indicate it's very unsafe, that the drivers think, well, everybody recognizes it's unsafe, and so they get permission to go fast because people recognize it's an unsafe area. In some of the worst intersections in Europe, they're taking out all of the lights and all of the signs, and people are slowing down. And the one that I read the article about was that they went from having 9 accidents a month to having 0. So please just consider that. Thanks.
Thank you. Speaker at microphone number 2.
Ann Forbes, 25 Martin Street. I have a question about the property at 6668 Harris Street for the fire station. Is there an existing building or buildings on that property?
Ms. Adachi.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Yes, there are a number of buildings. I know that there's a sort of a house-like structure at the front, and then what I do know is there was a big warehouse building toward the back that was of great interest for some of the town departments that wanted to store large equipment, and I think there might be a third building. It's been a while since I've been to the site, but I don't know, Mr. Manager, if you have a better memory of the site than I have, but there are existing buildings, and obviously some of them would have to be removed in order to build the fire station, or some or all of them, but we're not there yet.
Well, I may be mixing it up with another property then.
Oh.
Is this the one where the North Acton schoolhouse is, or is that nearby?
No, that's a different, that's next door.
Oh, that's 62.
Yeah, 62.
Okay, thank you.
And we don't own that.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Speaker at microphone 2.
Mike Solnier, 110 Onset Path. So Article 12 is about attempting to purchase the adjacent property at 62 Harris Street. I'm assuming that we're voting on proceeding forward with the design even if we could not acquire the adjacent parcel. And just by the way, as of about a week ago, there is no longer a historic schoolhouse on the adjacent parcel. Thanks.
Madam Moderator.
Yes,
we're voting right now. We're just voting on this without assuming that we would have access to 62 Harris Street. So, and we were aware of the demolition of the historic schoolhouse on 62 Harris Street. So,
okay, seeing no other people wishing to speak, could you take out your clickers? This does require a 2/3 vote to pass. Once you turn on the orange button, you can go ahead and vote. The voting period is now open. Voting period is now closed. I declare the two-thirds majority required has been made, and the motion passes. I will now turn the podium back to your regularly scheduled moderator.
So we're at that point in the evening where we're facing with something of a conundrum. We typically do not take up new articles after 10:30. The next article in order is Article 9, which involves Kelly's Corner. And I know there's going to be an amendment, so I suspect the debate will go on for some time. So I'm just wondering how town meeting feels about whether we should take that up or whether we should adjourn till tomorrow at 6:45. Adjourn. I hear a lot of adjourns. Madam Chair, would you like to make a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
To
6:45 tomorrow, sorry.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.